The forest doesn't care if you're bleeding. Clara's lungs burned with every ragged breath, her ribs screaming protests she couldn't afford to hear. The rain came down in icy sheets, turning the earth beneath her boots into treacherous mud that wanted to swallow her whole. She stumbled over exposed roots, caught herself against a tree trunk slick with moss, and kept running because stopping meant dying. Behind her, the howls split the night open like claws through skin. They were getting closer. Her shoulder throbbed where claws had raked through flesh hours ago, or was it minutes? Time had become something liquid and unreliable, measured only in heartbeats and the distance between her and the wolves hunting her down. The makeshift bandage she'd torn from her shirt was soaked through, warm and sticky against her collarbone. Every movement sent fresh waves of pain radiating down her arm, but pain meant alive, and alive meant she still had a chance. The pack war had found her in a town 3 days north of nowhere, working tables at a diner that smelled like burnt coffee and forgotten dreams. She'd been Clara Nobody, Clara Invisible, Clara the girl who kept her head down and didn't ask questions. For 2 years she'd managed to stay hidden, tucked away in the kind of place where people didn't look too closely at a girl with haunted eyes and no last name. But wars don't care about careful. Wars don't respect borders drawn by fear and desperation. The Blackridge pack had torn through that town like a storm made of teeth and fury, hunting for something they wouldn't name. She'd been clearing table 6 when the windows exploded inward, glass glittering like deadly snow in the fluorescent lights. The screaming started before she could process what was happening. Someone grabbed her arm, a wolf she didn't recognize, eyes wild with bloodlust, and asked her one question that made her blood turn to ice. "Where's the girl with the silver mark?" She'd run, grabbed nothing but the jacket hanging by the kitchen door, and ran into the Montana wilderness with half a pack on her heels and no idea why they wanted her dead. Now the trees pressed in from all sides, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers trying to drag her back. The storm had rolled in an hour after sunset, as if the sky itself wanted to drown her before the wolves could tear her apart. Lightning crackled overhead, briefly illuminating the dense forest in flashes of white that turned every shadow into a threat. Clara's foot caught on something, a root, a rock, her own exhaustion, and she went down hard. The impact drove the air from her lungs, left her gasping in the mud like a fish drowning in earth. For one terrible moment she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but lie there while the howls grew louder and the rain beat down on her back like fists. Get up, get up, get up. Her body obeyed before her mind fully caught up, some primal survival instinct stronger than pain or fear. She dragged herself to her feet, swaying, vision swimming. The world tilted dangerously to the left, and she had to grab another tree to keep from going down again. That's when she felt it. A warmth blooming beneath her skin, starting at her solar plexus and spreading outward like sunrise breaking over frozen ground. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat, growing stronger with each terrified breath. Her fingertips tingled where they pressed against the rough bark, and for just a second, so brief she might have imagined it, the tree seemed to hum back. No, not now. Not here. She'd spent years learning to bury that warmth, to smother it before it could become anything recognizable. Before it could become what they feared. What they'd hunt. The thing that had gotten her thrown out of her birth pack when she was 6 years old, left on the doorstep of a human foster home with nothing but a warning never to come back. Defective, they'd called her. Cursed. Wrong in ways that went deeper than blood. The howls were close enough now that she could hear individual voices in the chorus. 3 wolves, maybe 4, moving with the coordinated precision of trained hunters. They weren't just chasing her. They were hurting her, driving her towards something she couldn't see. Clara pushed off the tree and ran again, ignoring the way her legs threatened to give out, ignoring the warm trickle of blood running down her arm, ignoring everything except the desperate need to survive one more minute, one more breath, one more heartbeat. The forest opened suddenly into a clearing, and she nearly sobbed with relief until she realized her mistake. Dead end. Sheer rock face rose before her, at least 40 feet of rain-slicked stone that might as well have been a mile high. To her left, dense thorns created an impenetrable wall. To her right, a drop-off she couldn't see the bottom of in the darkness. And behind her, the howls suddenly went silent in that terrible way that meant the hunt was over. They'd found her. Clara spun around, back to the stone, and watched 3 wolves emerge from the tree line. They moved with liquid grace despite their size, each one easily 200 pounds of muscle and malice. Their eyes caught the lightning's flash, reflecting back at her in shades of amber and gold that held no mercy. The largest one, a massive gray beast with a torn ear, shifted first. The transformation was brutal and beautiful, bones cracking and reforming, for reseeding to reveal scarred human skin. He straightened to his full height, easily 6.5 feet of raw power, and smiled at her with too many teeth. End of the line, little rabbit. His voice was gravel and smoke, worn rough by violence. The alpha wants you alive, but he didn't say how intact. The other 2 shifted as well, flanking him. A woman with black hair and cruel eyes. A younger male who couldn't have been more than 20, eager bloodlust written across his face like a promise. Clara pressed harder against the stone, feeling the rough surface dig into her spine through her soaked shirt. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought they might crack. There was nowhere left to run. Nothing left to do but face what was coming. I don't know what you want from me, she managed, hating how her voice shook. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. Oh, you're something. The woman stepped closer, head tilted like a predator contemplating prey. You just don't know it yet. But don't worry, sweetheart. The alpha will explain everything before he decides whether to kill you or keep you. The warmth in Clara's chest pulsed again, stronger this time. Hot enough to hurt. She pressed her hand against her sternum, trying to push it down, push it back, but it was rising like water behind a cracking dam. Stay back, she whispered, but it wasn't really a warning. It was a plea. Please, just stay back. The gray wolf laughed, low and mean. Or what? You'll bleed on us. He lunged. And Clara's world exploded. The warmth became fire, became lightning, became something that had no name, but felt like starlight burning through her veins. It tore out of her chest in a wave of silver light that sent all 3 wolves flying backward, their shocked screams swallowed by thunder. The clearing lit up brighter than day, bright enough to turn the rain into falling diamonds, bright enough to sear spots into her vision. She collapsed to her knees, gasping as the light died as suddenly as it had come. The wolves were groaning, trying to get up, but they were moving slowly now, stunned. That's when she heard it. A sound that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up, that reached down into some ancient part of her brain and whispered, Predator, Apex, King. A howl that shook the very ground beneath her. It came from deeper in the forest, from everywhere and nowhere, a sound so powerful it seemed to silence even the storm. The 3 wolves in the clearing froze, their eyes going wide with something Clara had never seen in a predator before. Fear. Pure, instinctive, bone-deep fear. The woman was the first to find her voice. No, she breathed. He shouldn't be here. He never comes this far south. She didn't get to finish. The forest split open with the force of his arrival. Trees bent away like they were bowing, their branches groaning under the weight of his presence. The rain seemed to part around him, as if even the storm recognized something greater. And when he stepped into the clearing, Clara's heart stopped. He was massive. Not just tall, though he towered over the other wolves, but massive in the way mountains are massive, in the way the ocean is massive, too big to comprehend even when you're looking right at it. His fur was black as midnight, shot through with silver that caught the lightning and threw it back transformed. His eyes were molten gold, ancient and terrible and beautiful. And they were locked directly on her. The three wolves dropped immediately to their bellies, necks bared in submission, so complete it looked like worship. The gray one was actually shaking, his face pressed into the mud, whimpering. "Alpha King," he gasped out. "We didn't know the girl. We were just following orders." The great black wolf didn't even glance at them. He moved across the clearing with impossible grace, each step deliberate and measured, and Clara couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare as he approached. He should have been terrifying. He was terrifying. Every instinct she had screamed at her to run, to hide, to make herself as small as possible before this creature that could end her with a thought. But he stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his massive form, close enough to see the silver scars that marked his shoulders and flanks. And then he did something that made no sense at all. He bowed his head, not in threat, not in dominance, in something that looked almost like reverence. Clara's hand shook as she slowly, carefully reached out. She didn't know why. Couldn't have explained the impulse if someone had held a knife to her throat. But something in those golden eyes was familiar in a way that made her chest ache, that reached back through years of loneliness and fear to touch something she'd almost forgotten. Her fingertips brushed his muzzle, and the world went still. The rain hung suspended in the air like crystal. The thunder faded to silence. Even her own heartbeat seemed to pause between one moment and the next. And in that impossible stillness, a memory surfaced. Small hands clutching dark fur, whispering secrets into a soft ear. Golden eyes watching her through the slats of an old shed, keeping vigil while she slept on a mattress that smelled like mildew and broken promises. "No," she breathed. "You can't be." The great wolf shifted. The transformation was nothing like the brutal changes she'd seen before. This was fluid, seamless, like watching water become ice, like watching night become day. One moment there was a wolf, the next there was a man, and Clara's breath caught in her throat because he was the most beautiful and terrifying thing she'd ever seen. He stood before her, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing darkness like a cloak. Scars decorated his chest and arms, silver against tan skin, each one a story written in violence. His hair was black as his fur had been, touching his shoulders in wild waves, and his face was all sharp angles and hard planes that spoke of battles won and prices paid. But his eyes were still molten gold, still ancient, still locked on her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. And when he spoke, his voice was deep and rough, carrying the weight of years and distance and something that sounded almost like grief. "Little one." 2 words. That's all it took. 2 words and Clara was 8 years old again, curled up in a shed with a wolf who should have eaten her, but instead kept her warm through the longest nights of her life. 2 words and every wall she'd built, every defense she'd constructed, every lie she'd told herself about being fine, being strong, being okay on her own, came crashing down. "You're alive," she whispered, and her voice broke on the words. You left." "I thought." "I know." He took a step closer, moving slowly, like she was the wild thing that might bolt. "I know what you thought. And I have carried the weight of that leaving every day since." The 3 wolves were still prostrate on the ground, but Clara had forgotten they existed. The whole world had narrowed to this impossible moment, this man who shouldn't exist, this wolf she'd saved who'd apparently become a king. "I don't understand," she managed. "How? Why?" "Because I made a promise to a little girl who deserved better than the world gave her." His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her cheek with a gentleness that made her want to sob. His palm was rough with calluses, warm against her rain-chilled skin. "I promised I would come back when I was strong enough to protect her, when I could give her everything she needed, when I could keep her safe." His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "I'm here now, Clara. I'm here, and nothing will ever hurt you again." And Clara, who'd been alone for so long she'd forgotten what safe felt like, Clara, who'd been running for so long she'd forgotten what rest looked like. Clara, who'd been scared for so long she'd forgotten what hope tasted like, finally broke. She collapsed forward, and he caught her, pulled her against his chest, and held her while she shook apart. His arms were iron bands around her, strong enough to hold her together when she couldn't do it herself. One hand cupped the back of her head, fingers tangling in her wet hair, and he made soft sounds that had no words, but spoke of comfort and protection and home. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. "I've got you, little one. You're safe now." And for the first time in 13 years, Clara believed it. But safety, as she would soon learn, came with a price. And the man, the king, holding her so carefully against his heart, carried a curse that had been born the night he vanished from her life. A curse that was about to change everything. If this story already has your heart racing, hit that subscribe button for Shayla's Romance Library, because we're just getting started, and what comes next will set your soul on fire. The rain had stopped. Clara hadn't noticed when, too lost in the feeling of arms that actually wanted to hold her, of warmth that didn't come with conditions or expectations, or the threat of being ripped away. But now, pulling back slightly from his chest, she realized the storm had passed as suddenly as it had come, leaving the forest dripping and quiet under a sky that was starting to show hints of dawn. The man, the king, still held her, though his grip had loosened enough to let her breathe, to let her think. His eyes searched her face like he was memorizing every detail, like he was afraid she might disappear if he looked away for even a second. "Your shoulder," he said quietly, and there was something dangerous threading through his voice now, something that made the three wolves on the ground whimper. "You're bleeding." Clara had almost forgotten. The adrenaline was wearing off now, leaving behind the sharp reality of torn flesh and exhaustion that went bone deep. She tried to pull away, some old instinct making her want to hide the weakness, but his hands tightened just enough to keep her close. "Let me see." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't a command either. Somewhere in between, spoken in a tone that suggested he was very used to being obeyed, but was trying, for her sake, to be gentle about it. She hesitated, then slowly peeled back the ruined fabric of her shirt. The makeshift bandage came away sticky and red, revealing 4 parallel gashes that ran from her shoulder down across her collarbone. They weren't deep enough to be fatal, but they were ugly, still seeping blood in sluggish streams. Something shifted in his expression. The gentleness didn't disappear, but it was joined by something colder, something that made the temperature in the clearing seem to drop 10 degrees. He turned his head, just slightly, barely a movement, toward the 3 wolves still pressed into the mud. "Who touched her?" 3 words spoken softly, almost conversationally. They hit like thunderclaps. The gray wolf made a sound that was half sob, half groan. "Alpha King, please, we didn't know." "Who touched her?" The woman was shaking now, her earlier cruelty replaced by terror so pure it was almost painful to watch. "Garrick," she gasped out. He caught her arm when she tried to run. "Before we reached the clearing. But we were just following orders. We were told to bring back anyone with." "I don't care what you were told." His voice had gone quieter, which somehow made it infinitely more terrifying. "You put your claws in something that belongs to me." "Belongs to me." The words should have made Clara angry. Should have triggered every defensive instinct she developed over years of being owned by foster families who saw her as a burden, by packs who saw her as defective, by a world that saw her as disposable. But the way he said it wasn't possessive in the way she'd learned to fear. It was protective. Primal. Like he was claiming responsibility rather than ownership, like he was drawing a line in the sand and daring the universe to cross it. Damien. His name fell from her lips before she could stop it, pulled from some deep memory of whispered conversations in the dark. "That's your name, isn't it?" "I remember, I used to call you." "You called me Dammy." Something softened in his face, just for a moment, and she caught a glimpse of the wolf she'd known. The one who'd let a lonely little girl braid flowers into his fur and tell him about her dreams of flying. You were the only one who ever called me that. I thought I made you up. The confession hurt coming out. After you left, I thought, maybe I'd been so lonely that I'd imagined the whole thing. A wolf who let me cry into his fur. Who kept me warm. Who made me feel less alone. It seemed too impossible to be real. I was real. He lifted his hand again, this time tracing the line of her jaw with one finger, barely touching, like she was made of spun glass. Everything we had was real, Clara. Every moment. Every whispered secret. Every promise I made you in that shed while you tried to pretend you weren't crying. The memory crashed over her with visceral force. The shed behind her fourth foster home, the one with the leaking roof and the smell of rot. She'd hidden there whenever things got bad inside, whenever the shouting got too loud or the hands got too rough. And one night, bleeding from a punishment she'd earned by existing wrong, she'd found him. A massive black wolf, injured and hiding, golden eyes watching her with an intelligence that seemed almost human. She should have screamed. Should have run. Should have done anything except what she actually did, which was crawl closer and press her small hands against his fur and whisper, "Me too. I'm hurt too." He'd let her stay. More than that, he'd protected her. Kept her warm through the cold Montana nights. Eaten the scraps of food she brought him. Listened to every broken piece of her story without judgment or pity. And then, one night, when she'd begged him not to leave her, when she'd wrapped her arms around his neck and cried that she couldn't do it alone anymore, he'd vanished. Why? The question came out raw. Why did you leave? I woke up and you were just gone. No warning. No goodbye. Just gone, and I was alone again. Pain flickered across his features, deep and genuine. Because staying would have killed us both. Before she could process that, before she could demand an explanation, he turned back to the three wolves. His expression went cold again, frost settling over whatever vulnerability he'd shown her. Leave. Run to whatever Alpha sent you and deliver this message. The girl is under my protection. Anyone who touches her, anyone who even looks at her wrong, will answer to me personally. And trust me, his smile was all teeth and no humor. They won't enjoy the conversation. The three wolves scrambled to their feet, not even bothering to shift back, and bolted into the forest like demons were on their heels. Which Clara supposed they were. Then it was just the two of them in the clearing, dawn light starting to filter through the trees, and the weight of 13 years pressing down between them. I need to take care of your shoulder, Damien said, already shrugging out of the dark coat he'd materialized from somewhere. He moved toward her, and she saw now that he wasn't entirely naked. Dark pants clung to his legs, and she realized with some distant part of her brain that he must have phased with them, some trick of alpha magic she'd heard whispers about but never seen. He draped the coat around her shoulders. It was massive on her, still warm from his body heat, and smelled like pine and smoke and something wild she couldn't name. Then he was guiding her to sit on a fallen log, kneeling in front of her with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so large, so powerful. This is going to hurt, he warned, pulling a small flask from his pocket. But it'll prevent infection. The liquid he poured over her wounds burned like liquid fire, and she bit down hard on her lip to keep from crying out. His free hand found hers, squeezed once, grounding. Breathe, he murmured. Just breathe through it. She did, focusing on the pressure of his hand, on the careful way he cleaned the wounds, on anything except the pain. When he was done, he produced bandages, actual medical supplies, not torn shirt fabric, and wrapped her shoulder with practiced efficiency. You carry first aid supplies? She asked, aiming for light and landing somewhere near breathless. I've learned to be prepared. He tied off the bandage with gentle fingers. Being a king means expecting the worst and hoping for the best. King. Right. Because the wolf she'd saved wasn't just any wolf. He was the Alpha King, whatever that meant, and she was sitting here in his coat while he patched her up like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't understand any of this, she admitted. How did you know where to find me? How did you even know I needed help? He sat back on his heels, still close enough that she could feel his warmth. I've always known where you were, Clara. Always. From the moment I left that shed, I've had wolves watching over you, keeping you safe from a distance. The words hit like a slap. You've been watching me? For 13 years. Protecting you, he corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Anger sparked in her chest, hot and sharp. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds a lot like stalking. From where you're sitting, you should be dead. His voice went hard, not with anger, but with something that sounded almost like fear. Do you have any idea how many times I've had to intervene? How many packs I've warned away? How many threats I've eliminated before they could reach you? I never asked you to do that. You didn't have to. He surged to his feet, suddenly all restless energy, pacing the small space like a caged predator. You saved my life, Clara. When I was weak and hunted and bleeding out in that shed, you could have turned me in. Could have earned yourself favor with the local pack. Could have done the smart, safe thing. But instead, you fed me, hid me, healed me. He spun to face her, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. You were 8 years old, and you chose to protect a monster. So yes, I've spent every day since then making sure nothing and no one could ever hurt you. Because that's what you do for someone who saved your life. For someone who... He cut himself off, jaw clenching, and looked away. Someone who what? Clara pushed, standing up even though her legs were shaky. The coat fell around her like a cape, trailing in the dirt. Say it. Someone who mattered. The words came out rough, like they hurt. You were the first person in my life who ever looked at me and saw something worth protecting. Not a weapon. Not a tool. Not a title. Just me. And then I had to leave you, had to walk away from the only good thing I'd known, and it nearly destroyed me. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in her chest. She took a step closer, then another, until she was standing right in front of him, close enough to see the fine scars on his chest, close enough to see the way his breathing had gone shallow. Why did you leave? She asked again, softer this time. And don't give me vague answers about it killing us both. I deserve the truth. He looked at her for a long moment, something warring in his expression. Then he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Turned it palm up and pressed it flat against his chest, right over his heart. Feel that? His heartbeat thundered against her palm, fast and hard. That's what happens when you're near me. Has been since the moment you first touched me in that shed. And back then, when I was weak and wounded and barely holding on to my sanity, that feeling was dangerous. Because you were a child, Clara. A little girl who deserved to be protected, not. He broke off, but she understood. Horror and something else washed through her. The mate bond, she breathed. You felt it even then. Not fully. You were too young. But the pull was there, the recognition, and it was strong enough that staying near you was torture. I couldn't think straight. Couldn't control the protective instincts that made me want to kill anyone who looked at you wrong. And I was being hunted, had enemies closing in, and if they'd found me in that shed, they would have found me too, she finished. They would have killed you to get to me. His hand covered hers, pressing it harder against his chest. So I left. Went back to my pack, fought my way to the position of Alpha King, and spent 13 years making myself strong enough, powerful enough, feared enough that I could protect you properly. That I could give you a life worth living instead of just survival. Clara's mind reeled. The mate bond. She'd heard stories, whispered legends about the connection that could form between shifters, a pull that went deeper than attraction, deeper than love, deeper than anything human language had words for. But those were supposed to be rare, precious things that happened once in a lifetime if you were lucky. And apparently, hers had been growing in the background of her life since she was 8 years old. This is insane, she whispered. Yes. You're telling me that the wolf I saved as a child grew up to be a king and has been watching over me for over a decade because of some mystical bond one didn't even know existed. Yes. And now you just what? Show up and expect me to what exactly? Come with you? Join your pack? Play queen. His expression shifted, something almost like pain crossing his features. I expect nothing, Clara. You owe me nothing. But you need to know the truth about what's happening, about why packs are suddenly hunting you, about what you really are. That pulled her up short. What I am. You felt it in the clearing. When you unleashed that light. He was watching her carefully now, gauging her reaction. That wasn't normal pack magic. That was something older. Something the packs have feared for generations. The warmth in her chest pulsed as if responding to his words. Clara's hand instinctively went to her sternum, pressing against the place where the light had come from. I don't know what it is, she admitted. I've always had it, ever since I can remember. My birth pack, they said I was defective. Wrong. They threw me away because of it. They threw you away because they were fools. Anger threaded through his voice, cold and deadly. What you have isn't a defect, Clara. It's a gift. A power that hasn't been seen in nearly a century. And now that it's manifesting, every pack in North America is going to be looking for you. Why? Fear crept up her spine. What do they want? He stepped closer, cupped her face in both hands, and the gentleness was back, warring with the intensity in his eyes. Some want to use you. Some want to kill you. And some, his jaw clenched, some want to fulfill an old prophecy that says the one who possesses the silver light will reshape the future of our kind. Possess, Clara repeated, the word tasting like ash. You mean control. I mean own. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones, and she realized she was shaking. Which is why you need to come with me. Let me take you somewhere safe. Let me teach you how to use that power instead of fearing it. Let you keep me, she finished, pulling back from his touch even though it felt like tearing away a part of herself. That's what this is about, isn't it? Everyone wants to own the girl with the weird magic. No, the word came out sharp, almost harsh. That's not Clara, I'm not trying to own you. I'm trying to save you. By taking me to your pack? By making me dependent on your protection. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been in enough foster homes to know what protection looks like when it comes with strings attached. Something cracked in his composure. I am not them. I would never. You already did. The words exploded out of her, 13 years of hurt and abandonment rising to the surface. You already left me once, Damien. You walked away when I needed you most. So forgive me if I'm not jumping at the chance to trust you now just because you've decided it's finally convenient. The silence that followed was deafening. Damien stood frozen, looking like she'd physically struck him, and Clara immediately wanted to take the words back. But they were out now, hanging in the air between them, sharp and true and devastating. You're right, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. You're absolutely right. I left you. Abandoned you. Let you think you were alone when you never were. And nothing I say can undo that damage. He took a step back, then another, putting distance between them that felt like miles. But whether you trust me or not, the danger is real. Those wolves weren't rogues acting alone. They were sent by someone who knows what you are and wants to use that knowledge. And they won't be the last. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite his coat. So, what am I supposed to do? Just accept that my life is over? That I'll spend the rest of my existence running or hiding or being someone's prisoner? No, he shook his head, and when he looked at her again, there was something fierce and unbreakable in his expression. You're supposed to stop running and start fighting. Let me take you to my territory. Not as a prisoner, not as property, but as... He hesitated, seemed to be choosing his words carefully. As someone under my protection who is free to leave any time she chooses. I'll teach you to control your power. I'll keep you safe while you figure out what you want to do with this cursed gift. And when you're ready, if you want to walk away and never see me again, his voice caught, I'll let you go. It was the catch that decided her. That tiny crack in his armor that revealed the truth beneath all the king's authority and Alpha's power. He was scared. Scared of losing her again. Scared of failing to protect her. Scared of a future where she walked out of his life by choice instead of necessity. And Clara, who'd spent so long being scared herself, understood that fear in her bones. One condition, she said quietly. Hope flared in his eyes, carefully controlled but visible. Name it. No more watching me from the shadows. No more secret guards I don't know about. If I come with you, we do this honestly. No more secrets. He nodded immediately. Done. And you tell me everything. About the prophecy. About what happened the night you left. About this curse you apparently carry. She'd caught that earlier, the way he'd mentioned it almost in passing, and filed it away for later. Something shifted in his face, a shadow passing over his features. Everything, he agreed, but there was a weight to the word that made her nervous. Okay. She took a breath, trying to steady herself. Then I'll come with you. For now. Until I figure out what to do. The relief that washed over him was palpable. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides and pulled her into another embrace, this one fiercer, more desperate. His face pressed into her hair, and she felt him shudder. Thank you, he breathed. Thank you, little one. She let herself lean into him for a moment, let herself pretend that trust was that simple, that going with him was the right choice, and not just the least terrifying option in a world that suddenly wanted her dead or controlled. But as dawn fully broke over the forest, painting everything in shades of gold and amber, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just agreed to step into a story that had been written long before she was born. A story that had teeth. And somewhere in the distance, something howled, a sound that made even Damien tense. We need to move, he said, pulling back but keeping one arm around her shoulders. That's a hunting call. They're rallying more wolves. How many? Clara asked, even though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. His jaw clenched. Too many. Come on. He started to guide her toward the tree line, but Clara hesitated, looking back at the clearing where her blood still stained the mud, where her old life had ended and something new had begun. Clara, Damien said gently. We have to go. She turned back to him, this impossible man who'd been a wolf, who'd been her only friend in the darkest time of her life. His golden eyes held promises and secrets, and something that looked dangerously close to devotion. And Clara, who'd spent 13 years learning not to trust anyone, took his hand and let him lead her into the forest. Toward whatever destiny or doom was waiting. Toward a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Toward a pack of wolves who would see her power and either kneel or kill. But at least this time, she wouldn't be facing it alone. They moved through the forest like ghosts, Damien leading with the kind of confidence that came from knowing every tree, every rock, every hidden path. Clara tried to keep up, but exhaustion was catching up with her now that the adrenaline had faded. Her legs felt like lead, her shoulder throbbed with every step, and the world kept tilting in ways that made her stomach turn. She stumbled over a root she should have seen, and Damien caught her before she hit the ground. Without a word, he swept her up into his arms, cradling her against his chest like she weighed nothing at all. I can walk, she protested, but it was weak, half-hearted. You can barely stand. His voice was gentle but firm. Let me carry you. We have another mile before we reach the safe house. She should have argued more. Should have insisted on her independence, on proving she wasn't some helpless damsel who needed rescuing. But his arms were strong and warm, and for the first time in days, maybe years, she felt something close to safe. So she let her head rest against his shoulder and closed her eyes, just for a moment, and fell into memory. She was 6 years old, standing in front of the Moonridge Pack Council, and everyone was looking at her like she was something diseased. Her mother wouldn't meet her eyes. Her father stood rigid beside the Alpha, his face carved from stone, showing nothing. Around them, pack members whispered behind raised hands, their voices carrying words like unnatural and corrupted and wrong. The Alpha, a gray-haired man with cold blue eyes, stared down at her from his seat. "Show us again, child." Clara's hands shook as she held them out, palms up. She didn't want to. Every time she did this, every time the light came, people looked at her differently. Like she was something to fear instead of someone to love. "I don't want to," she whispered. "Show us." Not a request. A command. She felt the warmth building in her chest, responding to the fear, to the pressure of all those eyes. It crawled up her throat, down her arms, pooled in her palms. And then light. Silver light that filled the council chamber, that made everyone step back, that made her mother finally look at her with something that might have been grief. The light faded. Clara stood alone in the center of the room, small and trembling, waiting for someone to tell her it was okay. That she was okay. Instead, the Alpha spoke. The old texts are clear. Silver light means silver blood. And silver blood has no place in our pack. "She's our daughter," her mother said, but her voice was empty. "Already accepting. She's a curse waiting to happen." The Alpha's judgment was final, absolute. The last child born with silver light destroyed 3 packs before she was put down. "We won't make the same mistake." "You're going to kill her?" Her father's voice cracked, just slightly. "We're going to give her to the humans. Let her live among her own kind, the powerless, the forgotten. It's more mercy than the old laws require." Clara didn't understand all the words, but she understood the tone. She understood the way her mother turned away. She understood that in this moment, with silver light still tingling in her fingertips, she had stopped being their daughter and become their problem. "Can I take my bunny?" she asked, thinking of the stuffed rabbit on her bed, the one her grandmother had made before she died. "No," the Alpha said. "You take nothing of this pack with you." So they dressed her in human clothes, driven her 3 hours south, and left her on the doorstep of a foster home with nothing but a note that said she was found abandoned and had no living relatives. The door closed behind her parents' car. The red taillights disappeared down the road. And 6-year-old Clara learned what forever alone felt like. She was 7, in her second foster home, when she made the mistake of trying to make friends. The other foster kid, a boy named Marcus, who was 9 and mean, had cornered her in the backyard, demanding she give him her dessert. When she refused, he shoved her hard enough to send her sprawling into the dirt. The warmth rose instinctively, protectively, and she'd pushed back without thinking. Silver light had exploded from her hands, sending Marcus flying backward into the fence. He wasn't hurt, barely bruised, but he was screaming, and the foster parents came running, and everyone saw the light still crackling around her fingers. They called her a freak, a demon, said she was possessed and needed an exorcism. She was in her 3rd foster home by the end of the week. After that, Clara learned to bury the warmth deeper, learned to ignore it even when it pulsed beneath her skin, begging for release. Learned that showing what she really was would always end with rejection. By the time she was 8 and found herself in that shed with a wounded wolf, she'd almost forgotten the light existed. Almost. She was 8, and it was raining, and the shouting inside the house had reached the point where staying inside meant bruises. So she'd run to the shed, her sanctuary, her hiding place, and found him. Massive and black and bleeding from wounds she didn't understand. His golden eyes tracked her movement as she froze in the doorway, both of them weighing their options, both of them calculating threat levels. She should have run, should have screamed, should have done anything except what she did. "You're hurt," she'd whispered, taking a step closer. The wolf had growled, low and warning, but didn't move. Couldn't move, she realized. His back leg was mangled, and there were burns across his shoulders that looked like they'd been made by silver. "Me too," she'd said, pushing up her sleeve to show him the bruises on her arm. "See? We match." Something shifted in those golden eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition of a kindred spirit, 2 broken things finding each other in the dark. She'd spent the next 3 weeks keeping him alive. sneaking food from the kitchen, stealing bandages from the bathroom, talking to him in whispers about everything and nothing, about her dreams and fears, and the family she couldn't remember anymore. He never tried to hurt her, never even growled again after that first night. He just listened, watched her with those two intelligent eyes, and let her curl up against his warm fur when the nights got cold. "I wish you could stay forever," she'd told him one night, arms wrapped around his neck. "I wish you were really mine and we could run away together and never come back to this place." He'd made a sound, not quite a whine, not quite a growl. Something sad and knowing. 2 nights later, she'd woken in the shed to find him gone. No trace except for black fur caught on the wooden slats and the cold absence where warmth used to be. She'd cried until she made herself sick. Then she'd buried the memory deep, told herself it had been a dream, and went back to surviving. She was 13 when she first heard the whispers about the new Alpha King in the Northern Territories. Damien Blackthorn, they called him. Ruthless. Powerful. Built his kingdom on the bones of those who opposed him. Clara, working her 3rd restaurant job and trying to save enough money to age out of foster care without ending up on the streets, hadn't paid much attention. Wolf politics weren't her problem. She was human now, or as good as. The warmth in her chest was buried so deep she could almost forget it existed. Almost. She was 15 when she felt the pull for the first time. It had been subtle, barely noticeable, just a feeling that she needed to go north. That something was waiting for her in the mountains. She'd ignored it, wrote it off as restlessness, as teenage wanderlust. But it had persisted. Grown stronger. Started manifesting as dreams where golden eyes watched her from the shadows, where a voice she almost recognized called her name. She'd moved farther south, thinking distance would help. It didn't. She was 17 when the first wolves came looking. They'd been subtle about it, asking questions around her high school, watching her from parked cars. She'd noticed because she'd learned to always notice threats, and strange adults taking interest in a foster kid was always a threat. She'd run that night, grabbed her backpack, climbed out her bedroom window, and caught a bus heading west. Started over in a new town with a new name, cutting and dyeing her hair, learning to hide in plain sight. The wolves found her anyway. They always did. So she kept moving, kept running, kept telling herself that eventually she'd find a place where no one was looking for her, where she could just exist without fear. She'd been chasing that dream for 3 years when the Blackridge pack cornered her in that diner. And now, being carried through a forest by a man who'd been a wolf who'd been her only friend, Clara realized something that made her chest ache. She'd never stopped running from the night he left. Clara. Damien's voice pulled her back to the present. She opened eyes she didn't remember closing and found him watching her with concern. "You were crying," he said softly. She touched her cheek, found it wet. "Sorry. I was just remembering. The shed. It wasn't a question. He'd been there, after all. Lived through it with her. Among other things." She wiped at her face with the back of her hand. "You asked what happened after you left. That's what happened. I kept getting thrown away. Over and over. Different homes, different faces, same ending." Pain flickered across his features. "If I could go back." "You can't." She said it without anger, just stating fact. "And maybe it's better that you didn't. Maybe if you'd stayed, I would have become dependent on you. Never learned to survive on my own. You shouldn't have had to learn that." His arms tightened around her slightly. Children should be protected, not forced to become warriors before they're ready. "Yeah, well, tell that to the packs who threw me out for being wrong." The bitterness surprised her with its intensity. "Tell that to the humans who saw me as a paycheck or a burden or a problem to be managed. Tell that to everyone who looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the effort of loving." They'd reached a small cabin tucked between towering pines, barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look. Damien carried her up the steps and pushed open the door with his shoulder, bringing them into warmth and safety. He set her down carefully on a worn leather couch, then knelt in front of her eye level. His hands came up to frame her face, gentle but insistent, making her look at him. "You were always worth it," he said, and there was something fierce and unbreakable in his voice. "Every single person who threw you away was a fool. Every single one who looked at your light and saw curse instead of gift was blind. You were worth it at 6, at 8, at 13 and 15 and 17 and every single day in between." His thumbs brushed away new tears she hadn't realized were falling. "And you're worth it now. Worth protecting. Worth fighting for. Worth." He cut himself off, jaw clenching, but she heard what he didn't say. "Worth loving. I spent 13 years hating you," she whispered. "Hating myself. Trying to figure out what I did wrong to make everyone leave. Nothing." The word was almost violent in its intensity. "You did nothing wrong, Clara. Not then. Not ever. The world failed you. We all failed you. But that ends now." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted it so badly it hurt. But belief required trust, and trust required faith, and she'd had both beaten out of her so many times that she wasn't sure she remembered how to reach for them anymore. "Why me?" she asked instead. "Out of everyone in the world, why does the mate bond pull you to the broken foster kid with cursed magic? What kind of cosmic joke is that?" "It's not a joke." He stood, began pacing the small space with that restless energy she was starting to recognize. "The bond doesn't choose at random, Clara. It finds matches, souls that complement each other, that balance each other." He turned back to her, and his expression was raw. "I'm a king built on violence. I've done things that would make you hate me if you knew the full extent. I've killed enemies and allies alike, made choices that haunt me, carried the weight of thousands of lives on my shoulders. I'm dark and damaged and dangerous." He moved closer, knelt again, and this time when he took her hands, she felt the slight tremor in his fingers. "And your light, Clara. Pure, unfiltered light that refuses to be extinguished no matter how many times the world tries to snuff it out. You survived what should have broken you. You're stronger than any warrior I've ever known, braver than any alpha in my court." His golden eyes burned into hers. "The bond chose you for me because you're exactly what I need. Someone who knows darkness intimately but chooses light anyway. Someone who understands loss but hasn't let it make her cruel. Someone who can look at a monster and see the man underneath." "I'm not that strong," she protested. "You saved a wounded wolf and kept him alive for 3 weeks when you were 8 years old and had nothing." His voice was gentle but absolute. "You survived 15 foster homes and learned to hide magic that wanted to burn through your skin. You've been running from packs who wanted to own you or kill you, and you're still here, still fighting, still refusing to give up." He brought her hands to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that sent warmth spiraling through her. "You're stronger than you know, little one. And once you stop running long enough to breathe, once you let that light out fully instead of burying it, you're going to be unstoppable." Clara's breath caught. "The light scares me." "I know. Every time I've used it, something bad happens. Because you were a child who didn't know how to control it." He released one of her hands to press his palm against her sternum, right over the place where the warmth lived. "But you're not a child anymore. And you don't have to face this alone." The warmth pulsed under his touch, recognizing something. The mate bond, maybe. Or just the simple truth that after years of isolation, someone was finally offering to share the burden. "Tell me about the silver blood," she said quietly. "The alpha who threw me out said silver light means silver blood. What does that mean?" Damien's expression grew serious. He stood, moved to a small cabinet, and poured 2 glasses of water. Brought one to her, then settled into the chair across from the couch. "It's an old bloodline," he began. "Ancient, actually. Goes back to the first packs, before we split into territories and clans. The first wolves could shift at will, control their power with precision, and some very few were born with what they called the silver gift." He took a drink, gathering his thoughts. Silver bloods were healers and destroyers. They could cure any wound, break any curse, bring dying wolves back from the edge. But they could also unleash destruction on a scale that terrified everyone. Their power was tied to emotion, to survival instinct, and when threatened, they became weapons, Clara finished, remembering the way the light had exploded from her in the clearing. Exactly. Damien leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Most packs celebrated silver bloods, protected them, trained them, treated them like treasures. But about 100 years ago, a silver blood named Arya went mad with grief after her mate was killed. She burned through 3 packs in a single night, killed hundreds before she was finally brought down. He met her eyes. After that, fear took over. Packs started viewing silver bloods as too dangerous to live. Started killing them at birth or casting them out before their powers could manifest. Within a generation, they'd gone from precious to extinct. But I'm not extinct, Clara said. No, you're not. Something like wonder crossed his face. You're the first silver blood born in nearly a century, Clara. And everyone who knows the old stories is either terrified of what you represent or desperate to use your power for themselves. The weight of it settled over her like a physical thing. She wasn't just some girl with weird magic. She was a living legend, a bloodline everyone thought was dead, a power that could heal or destroy on a scale she couldn't begin to comprehend. I don't want this, she whispered. I know. I just wanted to be normal. To have a quiet life somewhere safe. I know. He set down his water and came back to her, sat beside her on the couch. And I'm sorry that's not possible. But Clara, he waited until she looked at him. Normal is overrated. And you were never meant for quiet. She laughed, but it was shaky. Easy for you to say. You're a king. You were born for power and politics and all this. I was born a runt. The confession came quiet, almost embarrassed. Smallest of my litter. Weak. Everyone said I'd die before my first shift. My own father tried to kill me when I was 2 years old because I was an embarrassment to his legacy. Clara's heart clenched. What happened? My mother hid me. Raised me in secret until I was strong enough to survive on my own. His smile was bitter. Then she died protecting me from another assassination attempt, and I ran. Lived as a rogue for years, fighting for scraps, barely surviving. The wounds you found me with that night? Those were from my father's wolves. They'd finally tracked me down, planning to finish what he started. He looked at her, and there was so much shared understanding in that look it hurt. So no, Clara. I wasn't born for this. I built it from nothing because the alternative was death. Just like you've been doing your whole life. We're quite the pair, she said softly. The throwaway runt and the cursed silver blood. The Alpha King and his fated mate, Damien corrected. Then, more gently, if you'll have me. The question hung between them, heavy with possibility and fear and hope. Outside, dawn had fully broken, painting the cabin in warm gold light that seemed almost prophetic. And Clara, exhausted and injured and overwhelmed by truths she'd never asked to know, looked at this impossible man who'd been her only friend when she had no one. Ask me again after I've slept, she said. And eaten. And figured out how to process the fact that I'm apparently some kind of magical unicorn everyone wants to either kill or control. Relief and something that looked like affection softened his features. That's fair. He stood, offered his hand. Come on. There's a bedroom upstairs with actual sheets and everything. You can rest while I make food and set up better defenses around the cabin. She let him pull her to her feet, swaying slightly. The adrenaline was completely gone now, leaving behind exhaustion so profound she could barely think straight. He guided her up narrow stairs to a small bedroom with a bed that looked like heaven. She collapsed onto it fully clothed, barely managing to kick off her muddy boots. Sleep, little one, Damien murmured, pulling a blanket over her. You're safe here. I promise. And Clara, too tired to argue, too overwhelmed to question, let herself believe him. Just for a little while. Just until she woke up and had to face the impossible truth of what she was and what that meant for the future she'd never planned for. But as she drifted off, She felt the warmth in her chest pulse once, twice, 3 times, like a heartbeat, like a promise, like a power finally ready to wake up. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and something cooking, bacon, maybe, or sausage, and for a disoriented moment thought she was back in one of the better foster homes. The kind where they actually fed you breakfast instead of leaving cereal boxes on the counter and calling it good enough. Then memory crashed back. The forest. The wolves. Damien. She sat up slowly, wincing as her shoulder protested. The bandage was clean and tight, professionally done, and someone, Damien, obviously, had left a glass of water and what looked like pain medication on the bedside table. The room was simple but clean. Wooden walls, a single window showing dense forest, a dresser with a small mirror. She caught sight of herself in that mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. Her dark hair was a tangled mess, still damp in places from the rain. There were shadows under her eyes deep enough to be bruises, and her skin had that pale, hollow quality that came from too much fear and not enough rest. But it was her eyes that stopped her, green and wide and holding something she hadn't seen in them before. Awareness. Like she'd been sleepwalking through her life and only just now woken up. She used the small bathroom attached to the bedroom, splashing cold water on her face and trying to tame her hair into something less feral. Someone, again, Damien, had left fresh clothes folded on the sink. Soft leggings and an oversized sweater that probably belonged to him, judging by how it hung on her frame. When she finally made her way downstairs, she found him standing at the stove, cooking with the kind of easy competence that suggested he did this often. He'd changed clothes too, now wearing dark jeans and a thermal shirt that did nothing to hide the breadth of his shoulders. He turned when he heard her on the stairs, and something in his expression softened. "You slept for 6 hours. How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck made of wolves." She moved to the small table, sank into one of the chairs. "But better. Thank you for," she gestured vaguely, encompassing the clothes, the medication, the fact that she was alive and safe. "You don't have to thank me for basic care, Clara." He plated food, scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and brought it to her along with the promised coffee. "Eat. You need your strength." She should have protested that she wasn't hungry, but her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. When was the last time she'd eaten? Before the diner, before the attack. Nearly 2 days ago. The food was simple but good, and she ate with the single-minded focus of someone who'd gone hungry enough times to never waste a meal. Damien sat across from her with his own plate, watching her with those golden eyes that seemed to see too much. "Better?" he asked when she'd cleaned half her plate. "Much." She took a long drink of coffee, letting the warmth settle in her chest. "So what happens now? You said something about teaching me to control the light." His expression grew serious. "Before we can do that, you need to understand what you are. Really understand it, not just the basic history I gave you last night." "Okay." Clara set down her fork, giving him her full attention. "Tell me." Damien stood, moved to a bookshelf in the corner she hadn't noticed before. He pulled down an old leather-bound book, the kind that looked like it had survived multiple centuries through sheer stubbornness. When he opened it, she saw pages covered in elegant handwriting and intricate drawings. "This is one of 3 remaining texts on silver bloods," he said, bringing it to the table. "Most were destroyed during the purge 100 years ago, but a few survived in private collections. This one's been in my family for generations." He flipped through pages until he found what he was looking for, then turned the book so she could see. The drawing showed a woman with silver light pouring from her hands, surrounded by kneeling wolves. Above her head, text in what looked like Old Norse. "She who carries silver in her blood carries the future in her hands," Damien translated. "That's the first line of the prophecy of the Silver Dawn." It goes on for several pages, but the core message is this: when a silver blood appears after a century of silence, it means the wolf packs are about to face a time of great change. War or peace, destruction or renewal, The silver blood gets to choose. Clara stared at the drawing, at the woman who looked both powerful and terrified. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person. It is. He turned more pages, showing her more drawings. Wolves transforming under silver light. Forests growing from barren ground. Cities burning. Silver bloods are catalysts, Clara. Their power doesn't just heal or destroy, it transforms. Changes the fundamental nature of things. He pointed to one particularly detailed illustration showing a wolf midshift, but the wolf had strange markings glowing under its skin. According to the texts, silver bloods can do things no other wolf can. They can break mate bonds or forge new ones. They can cure the silver sickness that kills us. They can even, he hesitated, even wake wolves who've been cursed into permanent forms. Something in his tone made her look up sharply. Like you. Like me. He met her eyes steadily. The night I left you, I made a choice. There were hunters closing in, not just my father's wolves, but human hunters who'd tracked my blood trail to that shed. If they'd found me there, they would have found you too. He closed the book, his hands flat on the leather cover. So I struck a deal with a witch who'd been tracking me. She offered me power in exchange for a price. Enough power to escape, to survive long enough to build myself into something strong enough to protect you properly. What was the price? Clara asked, though part of her already knew she wouldn't like the answer. A binding curse. His jaw clenched. Tied to the wolf form. Every full moon, I lose myself completely to the beast. No humanity, no control, just pure predator instinct. And it's getting worse, Clara. Each month I lose more time to the wolf, more of myself to the curse. Horror washed through her. How long do you have? A year, maybe two before I can't shift back at all. Before I'm just gone. Trapped in wolf form with no memory of who I was. He said it calmly, like he was discussing the weather, but she could see the fear underneath. The witch told me there was only one cure. A silver blood's willing touch during the full moon transformation. But silver bloods were extinct, so I accepted that I'd bought myself time at the cost of my future. And then you found out I was alive. And then I found out you were alive, he confirmed. Felt the mate bond strengthen as you got older, had my spies send me reports on your movements. Spent 13 years hoping and terrified in equal measure, because what if you died before I could find you? What if the bond was wrong and you weren't actually a silver blood? What if you were, but you refused to help me? He leaned forward, and there was something raw and vulnerable in his expression. I'm not asking you to save me, Clara. I made my choice knowing the consequences. But you deserve to know the full truth about why I left and why I came back. Clara's mind reeled. The mate bond. The prophecy. The curse. It was all tangled together in ways she couldn't begin to unpack. So everyone hunting me, they know about the prophecy? Some do. Others just know that silver bloods are powerful and want that power for themselves. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. The pack war you stumbled into? It's partially about you. Word got out that a silver blood had been spotted in the Northern Territories. Now every major pack is scrambling to either find you or make sure their enemies don't. Because whoever controls me controls the future. The weight of it was suffocating. I'm not a person to them. I'm a weapon. To them, yes. Damien reached across the table, took her hand. But not to me. To me, you're Clara. The little girl who saved a dying wolf and asked for nothing in return. The woman who survived everything the world threw at her and came out stronger. The mate my soul recognized before I even understood what that meant. His thumb traced circles on her palm, the touch sending warmth up her arm. I won't lie to you. Your power makes you valuable in pack politics. But that's not why I want you here. I want you here because 13 years ago I made a promise to come back when I was strong enough, and I'm finally keeping it. Clara wanted to believe him. Wanted it with an intensity that scared her. But trust was still a foreign language she was trying to relearn. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know this isn't just about the curse or the prophecy or whatever political advantage my power gives you? You don't. He said it simply, honestly. You have no reason to trust me, and every reason not to. All I can do is show you through my actions that I mean what I say. Starting with this. He pulled something from his pocket and set it on the table between them. A small iron key, old and worn. This is the key to the northern border gate. It's the only way in or out of my territory without permission. He pushed it toward her. Take it. Keep it. If you ever want to leave for an hour, a day, forever, you can. No guards will stop you. No one will drag you back. You have my word as Alpha King. She stared at the key like it might bite her. You're giving me a way to escape? I'm giving you a choice. His voice was steady, certain. Because real protection doesn't come with chains, Clara. And if you stay, I need to know it's because you want to, not because you're trapped. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached for the key. The metal was cool against her palm, solid and real. What if I use it? What if I walk out and never come back? Pain flickered across his face, but he didn't look away. Then I'll spend the rest of my cursed life knowing I at least gave you freedom. It'll be enough. It wouldn't be, and they both knew it. But the fact that he was willing to risk it, willing to give her power over her own fate even when it terrified him, that meant something. Clara closed her fingers around the key, held it tight. I'm not promising anything. I know. But I'll stay. For now. Until I figure out what I want to do about. She gestured vaguely. All of this. Relief washed over his features, so profound she could see the tension leave his shoulders. That's all I ask. They sat in silence for a moment, the morning light streaming through the windows, the remains of breakfast between them. Finally, Clara asked, so where do we start? With controlling the light. With understanding it first. Damien stood, offered his hand. There's a place I need to take you. About an hour's walk from here. It's sacred ground, protected by old magic. If anywhere can help you connect with your power safely, it's there. Clara took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. What kind of place? You'll see. A small smile played at his lips. Bring a jacket. And Clara. He waited until she looked at him. Whatever happens there, whatever you see or feel, I'll be right beside you. You're not doing this alone. And somehow, that promise eased something tight in her chest. The forest was different in daylight. Still dense, still wild, but less threatening. Morning sun filtered through the canopy in golden shafts, birds sang in the branches overhead, and the air smelled of pine and earth and growing things. Damien led her along paths that weren't quite paths, through sections of forest that felt older than time. The trees here were massive, their trunks wide enough that 3 people couldn't circle them, their branches reaching up and up until they disappeared into green shadows. This is old territory, he explained as they walked. Predates pack boundaries by centuries. Some say this forest was here before wolves learned to shift, before humans discovered fire. It's neutral ground, no pack can claim it, and everyone respects that. Clara could feel it in the air, that sense of ancientness. Like the forest itself was watching them, weighing their presence, deciding if they belonged. They walked in comfortable silence, and Clara found herself relaxing despite everything. There was something peaceful about moving through the trees with him beside her, not rushed, not hunted. Just walking. Can I ask you something? She said after a while. Anything. What was it like? Becoming Alpha King when you'd been a runt, when everyone expected you to die young. He was quiet for a moment, considering. Terrifying, he finally said. And satisfying in ways I'm not proud of. There were wolves who'd tormented me as a child, who'd celebrated when my father tried to kill me. Getting to watch them kneel and call me Alpha, he shook his head, it was vindictive. Petty. But God, it felt good. I think that's human, Clara said softly. Wanting the people who hurt you to see you succeed. Maybe. They ducked under a low-hanging branch. But it doesn't change the fact that I built my kingdom on fear and violence. I've made enemies, Clara. Powerful ones who would love nothing more than to see me fall. Being with me puts you in danger beyond just the silver blood hunters. Everything puts me in danger, she pointed out. At least with you, I have someone watching my back. His hand found hers, laced their fingers together. Always. The forest began to change. The trees spread out more, leaving space for undergrowth that glowed with small white flowers. The air grew warmer, charged with something Clara couldn't name but could definitely feel, a tingling along her skin, a hum in her bones. "We're getting close," Damien said, and there was something reverent in his voice now. They crested a small rise, and Clara stopped breathing. Below them lay a clearing unlike anything she'd ever seen. Perfect circle, maybe 50 feet across, carpeted in silver moss that seemed to glow with its own light. In the center stood a massive stone, easily 15 feet tall, covered in carved symbols that hurt to look at directly. Around the stone, smaller rocks formed a spiral pattern that led inward, each one marked with the same strange writing. "What is this place?" Clara whispered, unable to speak louder in the face of such overwhelming presence. "The Silver Shrine." Damien helped her down the slope toward the clearing. "Last known gathering place of the Silver Bloods. They came here to hone their powers, to commune with whatever ancient force gave them their gifts. It's been empty for 100 years. They reached the edge of the clearing, and Clara felt it, a pull, magnetic and undeniable, drawing her toward that central stone. The warmth in her chest pulsed in response, growing stronger with each step. "Go ahead," Damien encouraged softly. "It's safe. The shrine only responds to silver blood." Clara stepped onto the silver moss, and the world shifted. Sound fell away. The forest, the birds, even her own heartbeat, gone, replaced by a silence so complete it was almost a physical thing. The silver moss glowed brighter under her feet, leaving luminous footprints with each step. She walked the spiral path toward the center, drawn by something she didn't understand but couldn't resist. The symbols on the stones began to glow as she passed, silver light trailing her like a wake. When she reached the central stone, she lifted a trembling hand and pressed her palm flat against the cold surface. The vision hit like lightning. She was standing in this same clearing, but it was different. Fuller. Alive. All around her, wolves gathered, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all facing the center where a woman stood. The woman glowed with silver light so bright it should have been blinding, but somehow Clara could look at her directly. She was beautiful and terrible, power radiating from her like heat from a star. "The time of reckoning comes," the woman said, her voice echoing across dimensions. "When the packs have forgotten what we are, when fear has replaced reverence, when the old ways have been lost to new ambitions." She raised her hands, and the silver light pulsed. "One will come after the silence. One who carries the ancient blood but knows not its weight. She will be tested, betrayed, broken. And in her breaking, she will choose." The vision shifted. Clara saw herself older, standing in this clearing with wolves kneeling all around her. Silver light poured from her hands, from her eyes, from her very skin. She looked powerful and terrified, and in her face Clara could see the weight of impossible choices. Heal or harm. Save or destroy. Unite or divide. The vision shifted again. Darkness. Fire. Wolves fighting wolves, tearing each other apart. Blood soaking into earth while the moon turned red overhead. And through it all, someone screaming her name, begging her to stop, to help, to choose. She saw Damien, wolf form, fighting something massive and shadowed. Saw him fall. Saw the light leave his golden eyes. No. The vision shattered. Clara fell to her knees in the clearing, gasping, as reality crashed back. Her hands were pressed against the stone, silver light pouring from them into the ancient rock, making the symbols glow so bright they lit up the entire clearing. Damien was there instantly, his hands on her shoulders. "Clara, what did you see?" "War," she choked out. "Death. You dying." "Prophecies show possibilities, not certainties," he said firmly, pulling her away from the stone. The light faded as soon as she broke contact. What you saw was one potential future, not the only one. But Clara could still feel it, the weight of that vision, the terrible knowledge that her choices would reshape the world. Heal or harm. Save or destroy. Unite or divide. She looked down at her hands, still glowing faintly with silver light, and for the first time truly understood what she was. Not a girl. Not even really a person. A catalyst. A weapon. A choice the universe was forcing her to make. I can't do this, she whispered. Damien, I can't. It's too much. You can. He cupped her face, made her look at him. You're stronger than any prophecy, Clara. Stronger than fear or destiny or whatever the old magic thinks you should be. And you don't have to figure it all out today. But I saw you die, she said, and her voice broke. I saw you fall and I couldn't. Hey! His thumb brushed away her tears. I'm right here. Alive. And I'm not going anywhere. The prophecy said I'd be broken. She was shaking now, couldn't stop. What if making the right choice means losing everything? What if saving the Pax means? Then we'll face it together. He pulled her against his chest, held her while she trembled. Whatever comes, whatever choices you have to make, you're not alone in this, little one. I swear it. Clara buried her face in his shirt, breathing in his scent, pine and smoke and safety. The warmth in her chest pulsed, and for a moment she felt the mate bond clearly. Not just pulling her toward him, but wrapping around them both, tying their fates together in ways that went deeper than prophecy or magic. She was terrified. But maybe, with him beside her, she could learn to be brave. They stayed in the clearing until Clara could breathe normally again, until the visions faded enough that she could think past the fear. Damien held her the entire time, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances that she half heard but fully felt. When she finally pulled back, the sun had climbed higher, casting the shrine in warm afternoon light that seemed almost normal compared to the silver glow she'd triggered. Better? Damien asked, studying her face. Relatively. She managed a weak smile. Is it always like that? The visions. I don't know. I've never seen anyone interact with the shrine before. He helped her stand, kept a steadying hand on her elbow. But the old texts mentioned that silver bloods could sometimes see echoes, past and potential futures layered over the present. It's part of how they knew where to apply their power. Lucky me. Clara looked back at the central stone, now dark and dormant. So what now? We know I'm definitely a silver blood. We know there's some massive prophecy hanging over my head. And we know that everyone's going to want a piece of me once word gets out that I'm not dead. Now we get you ready. Damien's expression hardened. The Pack Council meets in 3 days. They're gathering to discuss the war situation and the rumors about a silver blood. I need to present you formally, establish you under my protection before someone else makes a move. Dread pulled in Clara's stomach. Meet the council. As in, stand in front of a bunch of powerful wolves who probably want to use or kill me. As in, stand beside me as my mate and show them that you're not a helpless girl they can intimidate. He turned to face her fully. I won't lie, it's going to be intense. Some will challenge your right to be there. Others will test you, try to see if you're as powerful as the rumors suggest. But if you show strength, if you prove you can't be pushed around, they'll leave me alone, Clara finished. Then, more bitterly, or they'll just be more creative about trying to control me. Probably. He didn't insult her by denying it. But Clara, here's the thing about wolf politics. They respect power above all else. Show them what you are, what you can do, and they'll think twice before crossing you. And if I can't control it? If I accidentally hurt someone? The fear was real, visceral. I nearly killed those wolves in the forest just by panicking. What happens when I'm surrounded by enemies and my instincts kick in? Then we practice. Damien took her hands, held them between his. We have 3 days. That's enough time to teach you basics. How to call the light intentionally, how to direct it, how to pull it back before it goes too far. You won't be perfect, but you'll be functional. And I'll be right there beside you. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to insist that 3 days wasn't nearly enough time to learn control over power she'd spent her whole life suppressing. But she could see the logic. Hide, and she'd always be running. Face them, and she'd at least have a chance at freedom. Okay, she said quietly. Teach me. His smile was fierce and proud. That's my girl. They left the shrine as the afternoon waned, hiking back through the forest with new purpose. Damien explained as they walked that they'd stay at the safe house tonight, start training in the morning when she was rested and fed. But as they approached the cabin, something felt wrong. Damien stopped abruptly, one arm shooting out to stop Clara too. His nostrils flared, scenting the air, and she watched his expression go from cautious to deadly in a heartbeat. Someone's here, he said quietly. Multiple someones. Stay behind me. Clara's heart kicked into overdrive, but she did as he said, pressing close to his back as they approached the cabin carefully. The door stood slightly ajar, and through the windows she could see movement, shadows that resolved into people as they got closer. Damien pushed the door open fully, and 5 wolves turned to face them. 4 males, 1 female, all dressed in dark clothing that screamed authority. They stood in positions around the room that suggested military training, ready for violence despite their casual postures. The tallest male stepped forward, and even Clara could feel the power rolling off him. Alpha, her instincts whispered. Not as powerful as Damien, but close. Blackthorn. His voice was rough gravel, filled with barely contained contempt. Heard you were hiding out here. Didn't realize you had company. His eyes found Clara, and something ugly flickered in them. Recognition. Hunger. Damien moved slightly, blocking the male's view. Darius. Didn't realize we were taking visitors. How did you get past the boundary wards? Please. Darius smiled, all teeth. You think your protection spells can keep out the Blood River pack? We've been tracking silver magic for weeks. Followed the trail right to your little love nest. You're trespassing, Damien said, voice gone cold. On neutral territory. That alone is grounds for territorial sanctions. We'll risk it. The female spoke now, moving to flank Darius. She was beautiful in a predatory way, all sharp edges and calculating eyes. Especially when the prize is so valuable. That is her, isn't it? The silver blood everyone's been whispering about. She tried to move to get a better look at Clara, and Damien's growl filled the room, a sound so primal and threatening that even Clara felt the urge to submit. Back. Off. Darius laughed, but there was no humor in it. Protective, aren't we? Tell me, Blackthorn, does your council know you've claimed a mate? Or have you been keeping secrets from the people who put you on that throne? My personal life is none of their concern. Oh, but it is. Darius circled slowly, like a shark scenting blood. See, there's talk. Talk that the mighty Alpha King has been making moves without council approval. That he's been hiding resources, making alliances, all in preparation for something big. And now here you are with a silver blood who, according to prophecy, could reshape pack politics forever. He stopped, faced Damien directly. So here's what's going to happen. The girl comes with us. Over my dead body. That can be arranged. Darius's smile was sharp as broken glass. But think about it logically. Your council is already questioning your judgment. You show up in 3 days with an unclaimed silver blood, insisting she's your mate? They'll never accept it. They'll see her as a threat you're too compromised to handle properly. He gestured to his pack. But if we bring her in, if Blood River takes responsibility for securing such a valuable asset, the council would be grateful. They'd see us as the pack that prevented a potential catastrophe. And you, he looked at Damien with mock sympathy, you get to avoid whatever censure was coming your way for keeping secrets. You're suggesting we hand over my mate to avoid political consequences. Damien's voice was deceptively calm, but Clara could feel the violence coiled beneath it. Did I understand that correctly? I'm suggesting you choose wisely. One girl or your entire kingdom. The other wolves had spread out now, forming a loose circle. Combat positions, Clara realized with growing dread. They were preparing for a fight. There's 5 of us and 2 of you, the female added. And no offense, but the girl looks like she'd blow over in a strong wind. You're outnumbered and outmatched, Blackthorn. Let us take her peacefully, and we can all walk away intact. Clara felt the warmth building in her chest, responding to fear and anger in equal measure. Not again. She couldn't go through this again, couldn't be taken, controlled, used as a prize to be won. Clara. Damien's voice was low, just for her. When I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. Just run toward the shrine and don't stop until you're in the center of the clearing. I'm not leaving you, she hissed. You won't have a choice. Before she could argue, before she could even process what was happening, Damien moved. One moment he was standing beside her. The next he'd shifted, bones cracking, form expanding, and a massive black wolf crashed into Darius with enough force to send them both through the cabin wall. Chaos erupted. The other wolves shifted instantly, rushing toward the hole in the wall. The female lunged for Clara, claws extended, and Clara threw up her hands instinctively. Silver light exploded from her palms, sending the female flying backward with a scream. The 2 youngest males skidded to a stop, staring at Clara with expressions caught between fear and awe. Outside, the sounds of vicious fighting, snarls and growls, and the wet impact of teeth finding flesh. Clara ran to the broken wall, saw Damien and Darius locked in combat, rolling across the ground in a tangle of black and brown fur. They were massive, both of them, but Darius was fresh while Damien had been weakened from earlier exertion. As Clara watched, Darius got his jaws around Damien's throat, squeezing, and she saw blood begin to flow. No. The warmth became fire, became an inferno. Clara didn't think, didn't plan, just threw herself toward the fighting wolves with her hands outstretched. Silver light poured from her in a wave that lit up the clearing like a second sun. It crashed into Darius with the force of a freight train, tearing him away from Damien and sending him tumbling across the ground. But it didn't stop there. The light kept spreading, growing, feeding on Clara's fear and fury. It consumed the cabin in seconds, reducing wood to ash. It reached toward the other wolves, who scrambled backward with terrified yelps. Clara tried to pull it back, tried to stop the destruction, but she didn't know how. The light had a will of its own now, ancient and hungry, and it wanted to burn everything that threatened its host. Clara, listen to me. Damien's voice, human again, shouting over the roar of power. You have to breathe. Focus on my voice and breathe. She couldn't hear anything past the rushing in her ears. Couldn't see anything past the silver light pouring from her hands. Couldn't feel anything except the terrible, unstoppable power that wanted to destroy and protect in equal measure. Then arms wrapped around her from behind, and Damien's chest pressed against her back, his voice in her ear. I've got you. You're safe. You can let go now. And something about his presence, about the mate bond singing between them, let her finally grab hold of the light. Let her drag it back inch by terrible inch until it was just warmth again, pulsing in her chest where it belonged. The light faded. The world came back into focus. The cabin was gone. Just gone. Reduced to ash and foundations. The clearing around them had been scoured clean, every plant blackened, the ground itself smoking faintly. And the Blood River wolves were gone too, fled into the forest while they still could. All except Darius. He lay on his side 20 feet away, shifted back to human form, alive but barely. His skin was marked with silver burns that looked painful beyond imagining, and when he tried to speak, blood bubbled from his lips. Damien released Clara carefully, made sure she was steady, then walked toward the fallen alpha. Tell your council, Damien said quietly, crouching beside Darius, that the silver blood is claimed. That she's under my protection. And that anyone who comes for her will receive the same welcome you did, if they're lucky. He stood, turned his back on Darius in a gesture of ultimate dismissal, and returned to Clara. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure it was true. Her legs felt like water, her head spun, and the exhaustion was so profound she could barely stand. "We need to move," Damien said, already guiding her away from the ruined cabin. "Darius won't be alone. He'll have backup position nearby, and once they see what happened, they'll come for me." Clara finished the sentence, her voice hollow. "Just like everyone else. Not if we get ahead of it." His jaw clenched with determination. "The council meeting is in 3 days. That's not enough time anymore. We move it up. Call an emergency session for tomorrow night." "Tomorrow?" Clara stopped walking, stared at him. "Damien, I can't. I just destroyed a cabin and nearly killed an alpha by accident. I'm not ready to face a council full of them." "You are." He cupped her face, forced her to meet his eyes. "You just proved it. You felt your power rise, and you brought it back under control. That's more than most Silverbloods ever managed on their first try. I only managed it because of you." The admission hurt, revealing how dependent she'd become on his presence in such a short time. "What happens when you're not there to ground me?" "Then you find your own grounding." His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. "But Clara, you're not weak. You're not helpless. You're a Silverblood who just sent 5 alphas running with their tails between their legs. That's power. That's strength. And tomorrow night, you're going to show every wolf in my territory that you're not someone to be fucked with." His fierce belief in her was intoxicating and terrifying. Clara wanted to live up to it, wanted to be the powerful, confident woman he seemed to see when he looked at her. But she was still just Clara. Still just the girl who'd been thrown away, who'd never been good enough, who'd spent her whole life running from confrontation instead of facing it. "What if I fail?" she whispered. "Then you get up and try again." He kissed her forehead, soft and lingering. "But you won't. Because you're stronger than you know, and tomorrow night, you're going to prove it to everyone, including yourself." They walked for hours, Damien leading them deeper into the forest along trails Clara couldn't see. Away from the ruined cabin, away from Blood River territory, away from everywhere until they reached a place that felt like the edge of the world. A small cave, hidden behind a waterfall that tumbled down moss-covered rocks. The sound of falling water should have been deafening, but inside the cave it became something almost musical, a constant rhythm that calmed Clara's frayed nerves. Damien built a fire near the entrance with practiced efficiency, using stones to create a ring, gathering dry wood from deeper in the cave where it had stayed protected from moisture. Soon, warm light filled the small space, pushing back shadows and cold in equal measure. Clara sank down near the fire, wrapping her arms around her knees. She was filthy, covered in ash and dirt and dried blood from Damien's wounds, but she was too exhausted to care. Too overwhelmed by everything that had happened in the space of a single day. Damien settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. He'd found clothes somewhere, probably stashed in the cave for emergencies, and now wore jeans and a dark Henley that had seen better days. His throat still bore marks from where Darius had bitten him, though they were already healing with supernatural speed. "You're hurt," Clara said, reaching out without thinking to touch the bruised skin. He caught her hand gently. "I'll heal. I always do." But he didn't let go, instead lacing his fingers through hers. "How are you holding up?" "I destroyed a cabin." She laughed, but it came out shaky. "Just obliterated it. And I nearly killed Darius, and I don't even feel bad about it." "I should feel bad, right? About almost killing someone. He came to take you by force." Damien's voice was hard. "He threatened you, threatened me, and made it clear he wasn't leaving without you. You defended yourself. That's not something to feel guilty about." But the power, she looked at her hands, half expecting to still see silver light crackling there. "It felt good, Damien. In that moment when I let it loose, when I felt it destroying everything in its path, part of me enjoyed it." "What does that make me?" "Human." He squeezed her hand. "Or wolf, technically. But the point stands, Everyone has darkness in them, Clara. Everyone has that part that wants to hurt the things that hurt them. The difference is whether you let that darkness control you or whether you control it. And today you controlled it. He shifted to face her more fully. You brought the light back when I called you. That's control, even if it didn't feel like it. With practice, with training, you'll be able to direct it from the start instead of unleashing it first and reining it in after. Clara wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that she could master this power instead of being mastered by it. But the memory of that terrible, glorious feeling, the rush of destruction, the satisfaction of watching her enemies flee, scared her more than she wanted to admit. What if I like it too much? She asked quietly. What if using the power becomes addictive and I turn into Arya, the one who burned through 3 packs? Damien was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Arya lost her mate, had him ripped away violently, felt half her soul die, and the grief drove her mad. You know what stopped her, according to the records? Clara shook her head. Nothing. She burned until there was nothing left to burn, including herself. The power consumed her from the inside out because she had no anchor, no reason to hold back, no one to ground her. He turned to look at her, and the firelight turned his golden eyes molten. But you have something she didn't. What? Me. He said it simply, like it was obvious. You have a mate, Clara. Someone whose life is tied to yours, whose soul recognizes yours. And I will never let you burn alone. If you start to lose yourself to the power, I'll pull you back. Every single time. The certainty in his voice made her throat tight. That's a lot of responsibility to put on one person. Good thing I'm not just any person. His smile was small but genuine. I'm the Alpha King, remember? Built a kingdom from nothing. I think I can handle one silver blood with control issues. Despite everything, Clara laughed. It was small and breathless, but real. You're ridiculous. I'm confident. There's a difference. He stood, stretched, and went to rummage in a pack Clara hadn't noticed before. I keep supplies stashed in places like this. Emergency rations, medical supplies, spare clothes. Let me see if I can find here. He returned with a bundle of fabric and a canteen. It's not much, but there's a natural pool in the back of the cave fed by the waterfall. You could wash up, change into something clean. It'll help, I promise. Clara took the offered clothes, soft leggings, and another oversized sweater, and the canteen. What about you? I'll keep watch out here. Make sure we weren't followed. He settled back by the fire, his posture alert despite his casual tone. Take your time. You're safe here. She wanted to argue that he should rest too, that he'd been fighting and shifting and probably exhausted himself keeping her alive. But the promise of clean skin and fresh clothes was too tempting to resist. The pool was exactly where he'd said, tucked in a natural alcove at the back of the cave. The water was cool but not freezing, fed by the waterfall in a constant gentle flow. Someone, probably Damien, had left soap and a towel on a rock shelf, another sign that this was a well-used safe house. Clara stripped out of her ruined clothes and stepped into the pool, hissing at the temperature but adjusting quickly. She scrubbed away dirt and ash and blood, watching the water carry away the physical evidence of the day's violence. If only she could wash away the emotional aftermath as easily. But as she cleaned herself, as the ritual of self-care brought her back into her body, Clara found herself thinking about what Damien had said. About having an anchor. About not burning alone. She'd spent so long convinced that relying on anyone was weakness, that needing someone meant giving them power to hurt you. But maybe there was a difference between need born of weakness and need born of strength. Maybe letting Damien ground her wasn't surrendering independence, but accepting partnership. The thought was foreign, uncomfortable, and strangely appealing. When she emerged from the pool, clean and dressed in borrowed clothes, she found Damien exactly where she'd left him. He'd added more wood to the fire, making it bright and warm, and laid out some kind of dried meat and fruit from his emergency supplies. Better, he asked, looking up as she approached. Much. She settled beside him again, accepting the food he offered. It was simple but good, and she ate mechanically, fueling her body because it needed fuel even if she wasn't particularly hungry. They ate in comfortable silence, the waterfall providing white noise that made the cave feel separate from the world. Protected. Like they existed in a pocket dimension where prophecies and pack politics couldn't reach them. Tell me something, Clara said eventually, setting aside the remnants of her meal. Something real. Not about prophecies or councils or any of this supernatural drama. Just something about you. Damien raised an eyebrow. What do you want to know? Anything. Everything. She pulled her knees up again, rested her chin on them. You know all these huge things about me, the foster homes, the rejection, the power. But I don't really know you beyond, was a runt, became a king, carries a curse. Tell me something that matters. He considered this, firelight playing across his features. I'm terrified of thunderstorms, he finally said. Clara blinked. What? Thunderstorms. He looked almost embarrassed. When I was young, maybe 3 or 4, my father locked me outside during a bad storm. Said it would toughen me up, teach me not to be weak. I was out there for hours, lightning striking all around, thunder so loud I thought the world was ending. I was convinced I was going to die. His jaw clenched at the memory. My mother found me eventually, brought me inside, held me while I shook apart. But the fear stuck. Even now, even as Alpha King, when I hear thunder, he shook his head, part of me is still that terrified child waiting for the sky to kill him. Clara's heart ached for him, for the little boy who'd been tortured by his own father. That's not weakness, isn't it? An Alpha King afraid of weather. That's being human. Or wolf. Whatever. She shifted closer, not quite touching, but near enough to feel his warmth. Having trauma doesn't make you weak, Damien. It makes you someone who survived. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. You understand that, don't you? Better than most. Yeah. She picked at a thread on her borrowed sweater. I'm terrified of small spaces. Locked rooms. Because foster home number 6 had this closet they'd lock me in when I misbehaved. Hours sometimes. In the dark. And even now, elevators make me panic. Windowless rooms make my skin crawl. I'm sorry. The words were simple, but weighted with genuine emotion. You deserved so much better than what the world gave you. So did you. Clara reached out, found his hand, held it. We both got dealt shit hands as kids. But look at us now, you built a kingdom, I survived a genocide. We're both still here, still fighting. That has to count for something. It counts for everything. His thumb traced patterns on her palm, the touch sending pleasant shivers up her arm. Clara, I need you to understand something. Tomorrow night, when we face the council, it's going to be brutal. They're going to question you, challenge you, try to break you down to see if you're strong enough to stand beside a king. I know. And some of them, he hesitated, choosing words carefully, some of them are going to say things. About your past. About the foster homes and the rejection and the fact that you're unmated, unclaimed by any pack. They're going to try to use your history as a weapon to make you feel small. Anger flared hot in Clara's chest. Let them try. That's the spirit. His smile was fierce, proud. But I need you to be prepared for how personal it might get. These are wolves who've spent centuries playing political games. They know how to find weak spots and dig in deep. So what do I do? How do I face that without falling apart? Damien shifted, turned to face her fully, and took both her hands in his. You remember who you are. Not who they say you are, not who your past tried to make you, who you really are. You're Clara, the girl who saved a dying wolf and asked for nothing in return. You're a survivor who refused to let cruelty make her cruel. You're a silver blood who just sent 5 alphas running. His golden eyes burned with intensity. You're my mate. My equal. And anyone who suggests otherwise is going to have to deal with me. The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered her. But instead, it made her feel protected. Valued. Like she mattered to someone in a way she'd never mattered before. What if it's not enough? She whispered. What if I freeze up there or lose control of the light or... Then I'll be right beside you. He released one of her hands to cup her cheek. Every moment, Clara. You won't face them alone. She leaned into his touch, let herself take comfort in his presence. Why are you so good to me? You barely know me as an adult. I could be terrible, selfish, cruel. You're not. He said it with absolute certainty. I've been watching you for years, remember? I've seen how you treat service workers, how you leave bigger tips than you can afford, how you go out of your way to help people even when it costs you. You're good, Clara. Right down to your bones. You sound pretty biased. Absolutely. He grinned, unrepentant. I'm your mate. I'm supposed to be biased. But I'm also right. Clara laughed despite herself, and God, it felt good. When was the last time she'd laughed like this? Easy and genuine, without fear weighing it down? Dance with me, Damien said suddenly. She blinked. What? Dance with me. He stood, offered his hand. There's no music, and we're in a cave, and the world's falling apart outside. But right now, in this moment, dance with me. It was absurd. Ridiculous. They should be planning for tomorrow, strategizing, preparing. But when Clara looked at his outstretched hand, at the hope and vulnerability in his expression, she found herself taking it. He pulled her to her feet and into his arms, one hand at her waist, the other still holding hers. They swayed slowly, finding a rhythm in the sound of falling water and crackling fire. I used to imagine this, Damien murmured, his breath warm against her temple. When I was building my kingdom, fighting my way to the top, I'd imagine what it would be like to hold you. To have you safe in my arms, no longer running, no longer scared. Clara's throat tightened. Was it worth it? All those years, all that violence. Ask me tomorrow. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. After we survive the council. After I know for certain that you're safe. They danced in silence for a while, just existing together in this pocket of peace. Clara let herself relax into him, let herself feel the solid strength of his chest against her cheek, the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. Damien, thank you. For coming back. For keeping your promise. His arms tightened around her. Thank you for being alive. For surviving long enough for me to find you. They stayed like that, swaying gently, until the fire burned low and exhaustion became impossible to ignore. When they finally separated, Damien built up the fire again and spread out the bedroll he'd found in his supply cache. You take it, he said, gesturing to the bedroll. I'll keep watch. You need sleep too, Clara protested. I'll rest once we're through tomorrow. His tone suggested no argument. Tonight, I need to know you're safe. Let me have that, at least. Clara wanted to argue more, but her body was already making the decision for her, pulling her down onto the bedroll before her brain could catch up. The fabric was worn but clean, and she was asleep almost before her head hit the makeshift pillow. She dreamed of silver light and golden eyes, of a future where she stood tall instead of cowering, where her power was a gift instead of a curse. And through it all, a voice, Damien's voice, promising that she would never face the darkness alone. Clara woke to gray dawn light filtering through the waterfall and the smell of coffee somehow brewing over the fire. She sat up slowly, disoriented, and found Damien crouched by the flames with what looked like a small camping pot. You carry coffee supplies in your emergency cache? She asked, voice rough with sleep. He glanced over, and something soft crossed his features when he saw she was awake. I carry the essentials. Coffee qualifies. He poured some into a metal cup and brought it to her. It's not great, but it's hot and caffeinated. She accepted it gratefully, letting the warmth seep into her hands. Did you sleep at all? Enough. Which meant no. We need to move soon. The council convenes at sundown, and we're a full day's travel from my territory. Reality crashed back. The council. The challenge. Everything she'd been trying not to think about. Clara's stomach clenched, but she forced herself to sip the bitter coffee and nod. Okay, what do I need to know? Over the next hour, while they packed up and prepared to leave, Damien gave her a crash course in wolf pack politics. The council consisted of 7 alphas from the most powerful packs in the Northern Territories. They advised the Alpha King, voted on major decisions, and could theoretically remove him from power if enough of them united against him. Theoretically, Damien emphasized, because I've made damn sure none of them are strong enough to challenge me directly. But they can make my life difficult, block policies, undermine my authority with the smaller packs. And bringing me to them, that's giving them ammunition. Clara understood politics, even if she'd never played at this level. They'll use me against you. They'll try. His smile was sharp. But here's what they don't know: I've been preparing for this moment for years. I have alliances they don't know about, leverage they haven't discovered. And I have you. Me? She nearly laughed. I'm the problem, not the solution. You're a silver blood. He stopped walking, turned to face her in the forest. The first in a century. According to prophecy, you can reshape the future of our kind. That makes you the most valuable piece on the board, Clara. And the fact that you're my fated mate? That gives me a legitimacy none of them can touch. Unless they decide I'm too dangerous and vote to what? Lock me up? Kill me? They won't. But there was something in his voice, a tension that suggested he wasn't quite as confident as he wanted to appear. Not with me standing between you and them. They walked in silence after that, moving quickly through forest that gradually became more cultivated, more controlled. They were entering territory, Damien's territory, and Clara could feel the difference. Guards posted at intervals, watching but not approaching. Trails that were actually trails, maintained and marked. The sense of civilization creeping back after the wildness of the neutral lands. As they walked, Clara noticed Damien becoming more alpha, his posture straightening, his expression hardening, the casual warmth he'd shown in the cave replaced by something colder and more commanding. This was the Alpha King, not the man who'd held her while she danced. Is it hard? She asked. Switching between the two? He knew immediately what she meant. Sometimes. The king has to be ruthless, has to make decisions that the man hates. But they're both me, Clara. Both parts of who I am. And which one will I meet today? When we face the council. The king. He said it without apology. Because the king is what they respect, what they fear. The man, he glanced at her, the man is just for you. The words settled warm in her chest, a promise and a privilege. But they also highlighted the danger. If the council saw any weakness, any crack in his armor, they'd exploit it. And she was the biggest potential crack of all. They reached a massive compound just as the sun hit its zenith. High walls, guard towers, buildings that spoke of wealth and power. At the center, a structure that could only be described as a palace, all stone and timber and soaring architecture that made Clara feel impossibly small. Guards met them at the gate, bowing to Damien with a kind of perfect respect that came from equal parts loyalty and fear. Their eyes slid to Clara with curiosity and suspicion, but none dared question her presence beside their king. Take her to the east wing, Damien ordered. Guest suite. Post guards, for her protection, not her imprisonment. No one enters without my explicit permission. Yes, Alpha King. The lead guard, a woman with silver-streaked hair and scars on her face, gestured for Clara to follow. Clara looked at Damien, suddenly unwilling to be separated. Where are you going? To prepare the council chamber and deal with the fires Darius has undoubtedly been setting since yesterday. His expression was unreadable now, pure alpha. You'll be safe here, Clara. My personal guards are loyal to me above all else. Rest. Eat. I'll send someone with appropriate clothes for the meeting. Damien, trust me. The hardness cracked just slightly, letting her see the man beneath. Please. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and let the guards lead her away. The guest suite was larger than any place Clara had ever lived, with a massive bed, a sitting area, and windows that overlooked a training ground where wolves sparred in both human and shifted forms. It was beautiful and comfortable and felt exactly like a gilded cage. She paced for a while, too anxious to sit, until a knock at the door announced the arrival of clothes. Not a servant, but a young woman close to Clara's age, carrying garments that looked far too formal. "I'm Mira," the woman said, her smile friendly despite the wariness in her eyes. "The Alpha King sent me to help you prepare. I'm I guess you'd call me his assistant. I handle the things he's too busy to deal with personally, like dressing his uninvited guests." Clara tried for humor and mostly succeeded. Myra's smile widened. "Like making sure his mate doesn't face the council looking like she wrestled a bear. No offense. None taken. I feel like I wrestled a bear." Clara looked at the clothes, a formal dress in deep emerald that would probably fit perfectly and make her look like she belonged in this world of power and politics. "Is all this really necessary?" "Unfortunately, yes." Mira laid out the dress carefully. "The council is old-fashioned about some things. Presentation matters. They need to see you as someone worthy of standing beside an Alpha King, not a throwaway foster kid with no pack." Clara finished the sentence. Mira winced. "I was going to say, not someone they can intimidate, but yes. Your history is going to come up. Darius has been spreading rumors all morning about your past, about your instability, about how dangerous it is for the Alpha King to claim someone so broken," Clara supplied. "Untested," Mira corrected firmly. "And here's what you need to understand. They're going to try to break you. That's what they do to anyone they see as a threat. They'll dig into your past, your pain, your fears, and they'll use all of it to make you feel small, to make you doubt yourself." She stepped closer, her expression intense. "But you can't let them. The second you show weakness, they'll pounce. You have to be strong, confident, unshakable, even if you're terrified inside. Fake it till you make it?" Clara tried to joke, but it fell flat. "Exactly." Myra's hand landed on Clara's shoulder, surprisingly strong. "And remember, you're not actually alone up there. The Alpha King chose you. That means something to wolves. It means he sees strength in you that maybe you don't see in yourself yet." Clara wanted to believe her. Wanted to be the confident woman who could face down a council of powerful alphas without flinching. But she could still feel the ghost of locked closets, still hear the echoes of voices telling her she was worthless. She let Mira help her into the dress, submit to having her hair styled and face touched with subtle makeup that made her look older, more polished. When she finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back looked like she belonged in this world. Poised, elegant, dangerous even, with eyes that held shadows and secrets. Not Clara the foster kid, but Clara the Silverblood. "Perfect," Mira breathed. "The council won't know what hit them." A knock at the door, and the silver-haired guard appeared. "It's time. The council has convened." Clara's heart dropped into her stomach, but she forced her spine straight, her shoulders back. Mira was right, fake it till you make it. And if she had to pretend to be fearless, she'd give the performance of her life. The walk to the council chamber felt like a death march. Long corridors, flickering torchlight, guards posted every few feet. Other wolves watched her pass with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility, and Clara kept her chin up, refusing to show fear. The doors to the chamber were massive carved wood depicting wolves in battle, wolves in triumph, wolves in glory. The guards pulled them open, and sound rushed out. Voices arguing, disputing, the controlled chaos of power plays and politics. The chamber itself was circular, with tiered seating rising up like an amphitheater. At the center, a raised platform where Damien stood, looking every inch the Alpha King in formal clothes that emphasized his authority. Around him, 7 wolves, the council members, argued amongst themselves. All conversation stopped when Clara entered. Every eye turned to her, and the weight of their stares was physical. These were alphas, predators, wolves who'd clawed their way to power and would defend it viciously. And they were all looking at her like she was either a prize to be won or a threat to be eliminated. Damien's eyes found hers across the chamber, and something in his expression steadied her. Not soft, he couldn't afford soft here, but solid. Certain. A reminder that she wasn't alone. She walked toward the platform, each step measured and deliberate. The dress helped, giving her a grace she didn't naturally possess. When she reached Damien's side, she turned to face the council and let them see that she wasn't cowering. Council members, Damien's voice rang out, commanding attention. I present Clara, Silver Blood, my fated mate, and under my protection. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Darius rose from his seat, and Clara's heart sank. She'd hoped he'd be too injured to attend, but he stood there looking perfectly healthy, the silver burns already healed. His smile was vicious. Your mate, he said, the words dripping with contempt. How convenient. Tell me, Blackthorn, when exactly did this bond form? Before or after you needed a political excuse to claim the first silver blood in a century? Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Other council members leaned forward, interested. The bond formed 13 years ago, Damien said calmly. When she was a child and I was injured. She saved my life. The connection was instant, though not fully realized until she reached maturity. How romantic. A woman stood now, Lyra, if Clara remembered the names correctly. Alpha of the Silver Moon Pack. A king and his rescued kitten. Except her eyes fixed on Clara, cold and calculating. She's not really a kitten, is she? She's a weapon. One with a history of instability and violence. I've never been violent, Clara said, finding her voice even though her heart was racing. No? Lyra smiled, sharp. Tell us about foster home number 6. The one where you put a boy in the hospital with your power. Clara's breath caught. They knew. Of course they knew. They dug into every corner of her past, found every mistake, every moment of weakness. He was attacking her, Damien said, his voice hard. She defended herself as a child against a larger, stronger opponent. That's not violence. That's survival. Is that what we're calling it? Another council member rose, Corvin, ancient and white-haired. Because I've read the reports. Multiple foster homes, multiple incidents of property destruction, multiple families requesting her removal. This isn't a stable individual, Blackthorn. This is a powder keg waiting to explode. Property destruction? Clara forced herself to speak again, to not let them define her narrative. I broke dishes when I was 7 and scared. I accidentally cracked a window when I was 9 and triggered. These aren't war crimes. They're evidence of uncontrolled power, Darius interrupted. Which brings us to the real question. You claim she's your mate, that you can control her. But yesterday, she nearly killed me and destroyed an entire cabin because she couldn't handle a simple confrontation. What happens when she loses control in a city? Around innocents? Around our children? The chamber erupted in discussion, council members arguing over each other. Clara felt the walls closing in, felt the familiar shame rising. They were right. She was dangerous. She couldn't control it. She was going to hurt people. Damien's hand found hers, squeezed once. The touch grounded her, reminded her what Mira had said. Don't show weakness. She has power, Clara said loudly, cutting through the noise. Yes, power that scares you because it's bigger than yours, older than your bloodlines, tied to prophecies you've spent a century trying to forget. And yes, I'm learning to control it. But let's be honest about what's really happening here. She pulled her hand from Damien's and stepped forward, putting herself fully in the spotlight. You're not scared I'll hurt innocents. You're scared I'll shift the balance of power. You're scared that a silver blood means change, and change means you might lose the comfortable positions you've spent centuries securing. Careful, girl, Lyra warned. You're speaking to pack leaders who were alphas before you were born. I'm speaking to wolves who are more interested in control than truth, Clara shot back. You want to talk about my past? Fine. I was rejected by my birth pack. Thrown away by humans. Spent my childhood being told I was worthless, that my power made me a monster. And you know what? I survived. Every single day I survived. That's more than some people with perfect bloodlines and fancy titles can say. She turned slowly, making eye contact with each council member. So yes, I'm untested. Yes, I'm still learning. But I'm also the only silver blood you've got. And according to your own prophecy, I'm supposed to reshape the future. So you can either work with me, or you can try to control me, but I promise you, one of those options ends very badly for everyone involved. The silence was absolute. Then Darius started clapping, slow and mocking. Quite the speech. Very inspiring. But it doesn't change the facts. She's dangerous. Uncontrolled. And she's compromised the Alpha King's judgment. For the safety of all packs, I move that Clara be placed under council protection until she can prove she's not a threat. Council protection, Damien repeated, his voice deadly calm. You mean imprisonment? I mean responsible guardianship of a powerful individual who needs proper training. She has proper training. I'm training her. You're her mate. Darius slammed his hand on his seat. You can't be objective. You've already proven that, hiding her existence, attacking council members who tried to secure her, bringing her here and demanding we just accept your claim. This isn't how we do things, Blackthorn. Other voices rose in agreement. The tide was turning against them. Clara could feel it. They were building momentum, a narrative where Damien was compromised and she was dangerous, and together they represented a threat that needed to be contained. There's another option, Lyra said, her voice cutting through the chaos. One that satisfies everyone's concerns. Damien tensed. What option? A trial by ordeal. Lyra's smile was cold. Old law, but still on the books. If Clara wants to prove she's stable, powerful, worthy of standing beside the Alpha King, let her prove it. 3 trials, overseen by the council. If she passes, we accept her claim and your bond. If she fails, she shrugged, then we place her under council protection until she's ready. And if I refuse? Clara asked. Then we vote. Right now. On whether to accept you or remove you from pact territories entirely. Lyra's eyes glittered. I think you'll find the vote won't go in your favor. Clara looked at Damien, saw the fury and helplessness warring in his expression. He couldn't stop this, couldn't prevent the vote without looking like a tyrant, couldn't defend her without proving their point that he was compromised. This was the betrayal. Not from Damien, but from the system itself. They'd boxed her in, given her no choice, but to submit to their test or be cast out. And if she left, if she ran, they'd hunt her down as a threat. She'd be right back where she started, alone and running. What kind of trials? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. 3 challenges, each designed to test a different aspect of your power and character. Corvin leaned forward, interested now. First, a test of control. Can you wield your power precisely or only destructively? Second, a test of will. Can you resist mental compulsion or are you easily manipulated? Third, a test of heart. Will you choose power or compassion when forced to decide? And if I pass all 3, then you've earned your place here. As the Alpha King's mate, as a recognized silver blood, as someone with a voice in pack politics. Lyra's smile was sharp. That's what you want, isn't it? Recognition? Respect? What Clara wanted was to not have to constantly prove her worth. But she learned a long time ago that the world didn't care what she wanted. Fine, she said. I'll take your trials. Clara, no, Damien started, but she cut him off. It's okay. She looked at him, let him see that she meant it. They're right. I need to prove I can control this. Not just to them, but to myself. So I'll take their tests. Something like pride flickered in his expression, mixed with fear. When? Now, Darius said, standing. No time for preparation, no chance to strategize. We test her tonight, all 3 trials, and we have our answer before dawn. That's not. Damien started to argue, but Clara touched his arm. It's fine, she said again, even though nothing about this was fine. Let's get it over with. The council erupted in discussion about logistics and rules, but Clara stopped listening. She'd just agreed to 3 trials designed by people who wanted her to fail, with no preparation and no real understanding of what her power could do. She looked at Damien, saw her own fear reflected in his eyes, and wondered if this was how it felt to walk toward your own execution. Fake it till you make it, Mira had said. Clara really hoped she could fake it long enough to survive the night. They moved to a lower chamber, ancient stone walls covered in marks that predated any living wolf, a space that hummed with old magic and older violence. The council arranged themselves in a gallery above, looking down at the circular floor where Clara stood alone. Damien had been forced to join them, to watch from above like a spectator rather than a protector. Before they'd separated, he'd gripped her shoulders hard enough to bruise and whispered, "Remember, you are stronger than you know. And no matter what happens, I'm with you." Now, standing in the center of that ancient chamber with dozens of eyes watching her every move, Clara tried to hold on to that certainty. Corvin's voice echoed from above. The first trial, control. Before you stands a crystal formation. Within it, 3 flames burn. Your task is simple. Extinguish 1 flame, protect 1 flame, and transform 1 flame. Use your silver light with precision. Destroy the crystal, harm the wrong flame, or lose control of your power and you fail. Torches flared to life around the chamber, revealing what Clara hadn't seen in the darkness. A massive crystal structure, easily 6 feet tall, with 3 distinct chambers inside. In each chamber, a flame, red, blue, and white, dancing with unnatural steadiness. Clara approached slowly, studying the crystal. It was beautiful and terrifying, and she had absolutely no idea how to do what they were asking. She'd never used her power with precision. Every time it manifested, it exploded outward, consuming everything in its path. "You have 10 minutes, Lyra called down. "Starting now." Clara's heart hammered. She raised her hands toward the crystal, felt the warmth building in her chest. But how did she direct it? How did she make it do one thing instead of everything at once? "Think," she commanded herself. What did Damien say? The power responds to emotion, to intent. So stop panicking and intend. She focused on the red flame first, the one she needed to extinguish. Imagined her power flowing like water instead of exploding like a bomb. Gentle. Controlled. Just enough to smother that one flame. Silver light began to glow around her fingertips, and she directed it toward the red flame. Too much, too fast the light surged, and she pulled it back desperately, nearly losing control. The crystal trembled but held. Breathe. Focus. She tried again, this time pulling the light out in a thin stream instead of a wave. It reached the crystal, seeped through the structure, and wrapped around the red flame. She imagined it smothering, drowning, and the red flame flickered, dimmed, went out. Relief flooded through her, but she couldn't celebrate yet. 2 more tasks. The white flame needed to be protected, but from what? Clara studied it, confused, until she felt the temperature in the chamber beginning to drop. Ice was forming on the walls, creeping across the floor toward the crystal. The trial itself was attacking. She had to shield the flame from the encroaching cold. Clara pulled more light from her chest, formed it into a barrier around the white flame's chamber. The ice hit her shield and stopped, unable to penetrate. But maintaining the barrier was like holding up a physical weight. She could feel it draining her, pulling energy she didn't know if she had enough of. And she still had one more task. Transform the blue flame. What did that even mean? Change its color? Its size? Make it into something else entirely? She reached out with her light, let it touch the blue flame carefully. The moment her power made contact, she understood the flame wasn't really fire. It was compressed magic, potential energy waiting to be shaped. And her silver light could shape it into anything. What would prove control? What would show precision? Clara thought of the shed from her childhood. Of small hands weaving flowers. Of a little girl who'd wanted so desperately to create beauty instead of destruction. She poured her intent into the blue flame, shaping it, transforming it. The fire expanded, shifted, began to take form. Petals of blue light, stems of silver, a rose made entirely of flame and magic, growing within the crystal chamber. The ice attacking the white flame intensified, and Clara gritted her teeth, maintaining the shield while holding the transformed flame in its new shape. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her hands shook. But she held all of it, until finally, Corvin's voice rang out. Enough. The first trial is complete. The ice stopped. Clara released her power all at once, stumbling as the sudden absence of that weight nearly sent her to her knees. She looked up at the crystal, one chamber dark, one chamber shielded and intact, one chamber holding a blue rose of living flame. She passes, Corvin announced, though he didn't sound entirely pleased about it. Clara didn't have time to feel victorious. Guards were already clearing the crystal, preparing the chamber for the second trial. The test of will, Lyra called down, and there was something eager in her voice. A silver blood's power is tied to their mind, their emotions. If that mind can be controlled, so can the power. Let's see how strong your will really is. A door opened at the far end of the chamber, and a wolf walked in, older, female, with gray streaking her hair and eyes that were entirely too knowing. She carried a staff carved with symbols that made Clara's head hurt to look at directly. This is Senna, Lyra explained. One of the few remaining mindweavers. She's going to enter your thoughts, Clara. Show you things. Make you feel things. Your task is to resist her influence, maintain your sense of self, and not let her manipulate your power. If you attack her, use your power against her, or lose yourself completely to her control, you fail. The mindweaver, Senna, approached slowly, and Clara felt something pressing against her thoughts. Not violent, but insistent. Like fingers trying to pry open a locked door. Don't fight me, Senna said, her voice surprisingly gentle. Fighting makes it hurt more. And giving in makes me fail, Clara shot back. Senna smiled sadly. Yes. The pressure intensified, and suddenly Clara was somewhere else. She was 6 years old, standing in front of the Moonridge Pack Council again. But this time, when the Alpha ordered her to show her power, when the silver light came, everyone screamed. Her mother burst into flames. Her father collapsed, bleeding from eyes and ears. The entire council chamber filled with silver fire, and Clara stood at the center, burning them all alive while they begged her to stop. No, Clara gasped. This didn't happen. This isn't real. But it felt real. The heat on her skin, the screaming in her ears, the terrible guilt crushing her chest. You're a monster, the vision whispered. You've always been a monster. That's why they threw you away. Clara felt her power rising in response to the emotion, felt it wanting to protect her from this pain by destroying everything around her. Senna was still there in the real world, vulnerable, and if Clara lost control. You want to hurt her, Senna's voice wove through the vision. The woman causing you this pain. Let your power out. Make it stop. The temptation was overwhelming. But Clara remembered Damien's words, you control the darkness, or it controls you. She closed her eyes in the vision, forced herself to breathe. This isn't real, she said aloud. My family died naturally. I didn't kill them. This is just fear given form. The vision shifted. Now she was 8 years old, in the shed, but when the wolf appeared, Damien appeared, he wasn't injured. He was hunting. And little Clara was prey. Run, the vision Damien snarled. Run, little one, so I can chase you. That's all you'll ever be to me, prey pretending to be precious. Not real, Clara said, even as her heart cracked. He came back for me. He kept his promise. The vision changed again, faster now, throwing trauma after trauma at her. Every foster home, every rejection, every moment she'd felt small and worthless and broken. And through it all, Senna's voice whispered, "Use your power. Make it stop. Hurt her like you've been hurt." But Clara held on, gripped her sense of self with bloody mental fingers and refused to let go. "I am Clara," she said, over and over. "I survived. I'm still here. And I am not my pain." The vision shattered. She was back in the chamber on her hands and knees, gasping for air. The warmth in her chest was agitated but contained. She hadn't lost control. Hadn't attacked. Hadn't let Senna manipulate her power. Senna stood a few feet away, watching her with something that might have been respect. She held, the Mindweaver announced to the council. Through every trauma I showed her, through every temptation to lash out, she held. Her will is formidable. Clara dragged herself to her feet, swaying. 2 trials down. 1 to go. The test of heart, Darius said, standing. And his smile was absolutely vicious. This is where we see what she really values. Power? Or the lives of those who might stand in her way. Another door opened. Clara's stomach dropped when she saw who walked through it. A child. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, with dark hair and wide, terrified eyes. She was being led by guards, and she looked at Clara with desperate hope. This child, Darius explained, has been infected with silver sickness. You know what that is? The disease that kills us slowly, painfully, from the inside out. According to the old texts, a silver blood can cure it. 1 touch of your power, properly directed, and she lives. Clara stared at the child, horror growing. What's the test? Save her life? That's not a test, that's just. The test, Darius interrupted, is what comes after. You see, curing silver sickness requires a massive amount of power. More than you've used for both previous trials combined. And there's a prophecy, one I'm sure our Alpha King hasn't mentioned, that says a silver blood who uses their full power awakens something. A darkness that's been sleeping in these mountains for centuries. He leaned forward. So here's your choice, Clara. Use your power, save the child, and potentially unleash catastrophe on every pack in these territories. Or refuse, let her die, and prove you can make the hard decisions that a leader sometimes has to make. Either way, you lose something. The question is, what matters more? 1 innocent life, or the potential safety of thousands? That's not a fair choice, Clara said, her voice shaking with fury. Leadership isn't about fair choices. It's about impossible ones. Lyra's eyes were cold. Choose. Clara looked at the little girl, saw herself in those terrified eyes. Saw every child who'd ever been sacrificed on the altar of politics and prophecy and power. Saw everything she'd suffered because adults had made hard decisions that left her broken and alone. And she made her choice. Bring her here, Clara said quietly. You understand the risk? Corvin pressed. You could be condemning thousands. I understand that you're asking me to let a child die to maintain your sense of safety. Clara's voice was steel. And I'm telling you no. I won't be the person who chooses politics over innocence. I won't be the kind of leader who sacrifices the weak to protect the powerful. Bring her here. The guards hesitated, looked to Damien. He nodded once, his expression unreadable. They brought the child forward. She was shaking, crying silently, and when Clara knelt down in front of her, the little girl flinched. Hey, Clara said softly. What's your name? Lily. Lily. That's a beautiful name. Clara took the girl's small hands in hers. I'm Clara. And I'm going to make you feel better, okay? It might be scary for a second, but I promise it won't hurt. You're really going to do this? Damien's voice came from above, tight with something Clara couldn't identify. Even knowing what might happen? Clara looked up at him, let him see her certainty. Some choices aren't really choices. If saving her means facing whatever darkness wakes up, then that's what I'll do. But I won't let a child die because adults are afraid. She turned back to Lily, pulled the warmth from her chest. But this time, instead of letting it explode outward, she shaped it carefully. Gently. Let it flow from her hands into the little girl like warm water, finding the sickness in her blood and burning it away. Lily gasped, her eyes going wide. Silver light enveloped them both, but it wasn't violent or destructive. It was healing, transformative, exactly what the old texts described. Clara could feel the sickness dissolving, could feel life and health flowing back into the child's body. And she could feel something else. Something waking up. Deep in the mountains, far from the chamber, but getting closer, an ancient presence stirred. Clara felt its attention turn toward her like a massive eye-opening after centuries of sleep. Felt its hunger, its curiosity, its terrible power. The ground trembled. Somewhere in the distance, wolves began howling in alarm. But Clara didn't stop. She poured everything she had into healing Lily, into making sure this one innocent life was saved, consequences be damned. When she finally released her power, Lily stood healthy and whole, the silver sickness completely gone. The little girl threw her arms around Clara's neck, crying with relief. "You saved me," she whispered. "You saved me." "Yeah." Clara hugged her back, even as the trembling in the ground grew stronger. "I did." The chamber doors burst open. Wolves in guard uniforms rushed in, their expressions panicked. "Alpha King," one shouted. "The Shadow Maw is awake. It's moving toward the compound." Chaos erupted in the gallery. Council members arguing, some calling for evacuation, others demanding Clara be imprisoned immediately for unleashing this threat. But Damien was already moving. He leapt from the gallery, landing beside Clara with supernatural grace. His eyes met hers, and there was no accusation in them. Only grim acceptance. "You couldn't let her die," he said. Not a question. No, Clara stood, putting herself between Lily and the chamber entrance where something massive and dark was approaching. "I couldn't. And I won't apologize for it." "Good." He turned to face the entrance beside her. "Because neither would I." The Shadow Maw arrived. It was massive, a wolf the size of a small building, made of living shadow and ancient rage. Its eyes burned red, and when it opened its mouth, the sound that came out was older than language, a roar that spoke of centuries of imprisonment and fury. "Council orders," Darius shouted from above. "Kill the beast, or it kills us all." Guards poured into the chamber, shifted forms, rushed toward the creature. The Shadow Maw swatted them aside like insects, its shadow form making it impossible to land solid hits. Wolves flew through the air, crashed into walls, didn't get up. "Clara." Damien's hand found hers. "I need you to do exactly what I say. Can you trust me?" She looked at him, this man who'd been a wolf who'd been her only friend, and made another impossible choice. "Yes." "Then when I tell you, I need you to use your power. All of it. Everything you have. Aim it at the Shadow Maw and don't hold back." "Damien, if I do that, if I use that much power, I might not be able to control it. I could destroy everything." "I know." His smile was fierce. "That's why I'm going to be your anchor. Remember? You don't burn alone." The Shadow Maw turned its attention toward them. Toward Clara, specifically. It could feel her power, recognize her as the one who'd woken it. And it was hungry for that power, wanted to consume it and her along with it. It charged. "Now!" Damien shouted. Clara let go. Every wall she'd ever built, every barrier she'd constructed, every bit of control she'd learned gone. The warmth became fire, became starlight, became something that had no name in any language. Silver light exploded from her in a column that reached from floor to ceiling, so bright it turned the entire chamber white. But this time, she wasn't alone. Damien's presence wrapped around her consciousness like arms, like the mate bond made manifest. His strength flowed into her, steadying her, giving her something to hold on to while the power raged. And together they directed it. The silver light slammed into the Shadow Maw with the force of a collapsing star. The creature screamed, its shadow form beginning to dissolve under the onslaught. But it fought back, its own ancient magic pushing against Clara's light, creating a clash of powers that made the entire chamber shake. More. Damien's voice in her mind. You can do more. Clara dug deeper, found reserves she didn't know she had. The light intensified, began to change the shadow maw from shadow to solid, from ancient curse to flesh and blood. And once it was solid, it was vulnerable. Damien shifted in an instant, his massive black wolf form launching at the now physical shadow maw. They collided in a tangle of claws and teeth, two apex predators fighting with everything they had. Clara maintained the light, kept the shadow maw solid even as her vision swam, even as exhaustion dragged at her consciousness. She felt herself starting to slip, starting to lose grip on reality. And the mate bond caught her. Damien's presence in her mind, in her soul, keeping her anchored to the world even as the power tried to consume her. With a final, devastating bite, Damien tore out the shadow maw's throat. The creature collapsed, its death throes shaking the chamber. And as it died, something strange happened. Its shadow form didn't dissipate. Instead, it began to transform, to take new shape. The darkness receded, leaving behind not a monster, but a wolf. Just a wolf, though larger than normal, with gray fur and eyes that held awareness instead of rage. It looked at Clara, and she understood. The shadow maw hadn't been a demon. It had been a cursed wolf, trapped in shadow form for centuries, driven mad by isolation and dark magic. And her silver light, combined with Damien's strength, had broken the curse, had given it back its true form. The wolf bowed its head to her, then turned and limped away into the shadows, free at last. Clara's legs gave out. Damien caught her before she hit the ground, shifted back to human form, and held her against his chest. I've got you, he murmured. You did it. You saved the child and freed the shadow maw. You incredible, impossible woman. Clara tried to respond, but unconsciousness was pulling at her. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was the sound of the council members arguing, Damien's growl cutting through their voices, and one phrase repeated over and over. She passed. All 3 trials. She passed. Clara woke to soft morning light and the feeling of being watched. She opened her eyes slowly and found Damien sitting beside the bed, her bed, in the guest suite, looking like he hadn't slept at all. His hair was disheveled, his clothes rumpled, and there were shadows under his eyes. But when he saw she was awake, relief transformed his entire face. How long? She asked, her voice rough. 18 hours. You've been unconscious since the trials ended. He reached for her hand, held it gently. You scared me, little one. Your heartbeat kept dropping, and I thought. He cut himself off, shook his head. But you're okay. You're going to be okay. Memory came flooding back. The trials. The child. The shadow maw. Lily, the little girl, is perfectly healthy and has been asking about you constantly. Her mother wants to thank you personally. Damien's thumb traced circles on her palm. You saved her life, Clara. And in doing so, you proved something the council couldn't deny. That I'm not afraid to make enemies by doing the right thing. That you're exactly the kind of leader our world needs. His expression was intense. A silver blood who chooses compassion over convenience. Who'd rather face a monster than sacrifice an innocent. Who understands that real power isn't about control, it's about connection. Clara pushed herself up to sitting, wincing as her body protested. What happened after I passed out? With the council. They had no choice but to accept you. You passed all 3 trials, technically, spectacularly. Some of them are furious about it. His smile was sharp. Darius is particularly unhappy. But the old laws are clear. You proved your worth. You have a place here now if you want it. If you want it. Clara looked around the room, beautiful and comfortable and nothing like the cheap motels and shelter beds she'd grown used to. Looked at Damien, powerful and devoted, and offering her everything she'd never dared dream of. looked at her hands, still faintly glowing with silver light that she was learning to understand instead of fear. What if I don't know what I want? She asked quietly. What if I'm still too scared to believe this is real? Then we take it one day at a time. Damien shifted closer, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. You don't have to decide your whole future right now, Clara. You don't have to commit to being a queen or a silver blood savior or anything else. You just have to decide if you're willing to stay one more day. To see what happens when you stop running long enough to catch your breath. One more day. That felt manageable. Less terrifying than forever. And the curse, she asked, remembering. The one that's turning you into wolf permanently? Still there. Still ticking down. But he didn't sound afraid, not like before. But we have time to figure it out now. Time for you to learn your power properly. Time for us to, he hesitated, to see if this bond between us is real or just prophecy forcing us together. It's real, Clara said, surprising herself with her certainty. I feel it. Have felt it since I woke up in that cave, and you were there, solid and real after years of thinking I'd imagined you. That's not prophecy. That's fate, Damien finished. The kind that's worth fighting for. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, when she actually leaned toward him, his lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle and fierce and full of promise. When they finally separated, both breathing harder, Clara saw the future in his eyes. Not the one from the prophecy, dark and full of choices that would break her. But a different one. A possibility where she stood tall instead of cowering, where her power was gift instead of curse, where she had someone to share the burden with instead of carrying it alone. It was terrifying. It was impossible. It was everything she'd never let herself hope for. One more day, she agreed. I'll stay one more day. Damien's smile was brilliant. That's all I need. But as Clara settled back into the pillows, as Damien went to fetch food and tell everyone she was awake, a shadow crossed the window. Too quick to see clearly, but they're watching. Because the trials might be over, and the Shadow Mom might be freed, but Clara's awakening had rippled across every pack in North America. Word was spreading, a silver blood walks among them. The prophecy is in motion. Change is coming. And in dark corners and hidden places, those who wanted to use that change, or stop it entirely, were beginning to move. The pack war she'd stumbled into was about to escalate into something bigger. Something that would force Clara to make the impossible choices the prophecy had warned about. Heal or harm. Save or destroy. Unite or divide. The silver blood had awakened. And the world would never be the same. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today, Clara was going to eat breakfast with the man who'd kept his promise. She was going to meet the little girl whose life she'd saved. She was going to take one more step away from the girl who ran and toward the woman who stood her ground. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One breath at a time. Until she became the person the prophecy saw in her, not because she had to, but because she chose to. So here's the question, and answer it honestly. Would you have made the same choice? Would you have saved Lily knowing what it might unleash? Would you have chosen one innocent life over the potential safety of thousands? Because that's what it means to have real power, not the silver light that can destroy mountains or heal the dying, but the power to choose who you'll be when the world demands you sacrifice your compassion for convenience. Clara chose to be someone who saves the child. Who faces the monster? Who burns bright instead of hiding in shadows? What would you choose? And more importantly, are you brave enough to follow her story to see what happens next? Because the trials are just the beginning. The prophecy is in motion. And the girl who was once thrown away is about to reshape the fate of every wolf pack in existence. If this story lit something inside you, if you felt Clara's fear and fury, if you wanted to stand beside her when she faced that council, if you understand what it means to be called broken when you're really just surviving, then subscribe to Shayla's Romance Library. Because here, we don't tell stories about perfect heroines who never doubt themselves. We tell stories about women who are terrified and choose courage anyway. We tell stories about the ones who were thrown away and came back powerful. We tell stories that burn.